Victor Hale pressed the barrel of his pistol against Daniel Foster's forehead and smiled like a man who had already won. "You thought you could expose me," he whispered. "You thought anyone would come for a nobody like you." He leaned closer, his breath warm in the freezing dark. "Let me tell you a secret, son. Nobody is coming. And even if they did, I know exactly how they think. I trained them." And 1,000 miles away, a woman most of her own team didn't trust was about to prove him wrong with a single pull of a trigger. Before we go any further, if a story about loyalty, courage, and the price of proving yourself means something to you, take 1 second right now and subscribe to this channel, then stay with me all the way to the end. And leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from, because I truly love seeing how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The rag moved in slow circles down the length of the rifle barrel patient and steady the way a person cleans something they trust. They trust more than they trust most people. Maya Carter didn't look up when the laughter started across the room. She didn't need to look up to know who it belonged to. "Watch this," Jake Reynolds said, loud enough to carry. "She cleans that thing like it's baby. Talks to it too, I bet." A couple of the younger operators chuckled the way men chuckle when they aren't too sure it's funny, but they know who's in charge of the room. Maya kept working. Bolt, chamber, barrel. Her hands never rushed, never slowed, never trembled. That steadiness was the first thing she'd learned to protect long before she ever learned to shoot. People could take a lot of things from you. They could take your reputation. They could take the credit for your work. They could stand in a briefing room full of decorated men and decide before you'd said a single word that you didn't belong there. But they couldn't take your hands, not unless you let them. "You hear me, Carter?" Jake said. "I hear you, Reynolds. And I'm cleaning my rifle." That got a real laugh, a couple of low whistles, and Jake's jaw tightened because it wasn't the reaction he'd wanted. He'd wanted her rattled. He'd been trying to rattle her for 4 months, and it hadn't worked once. And a man like Jake didn't take kindly to a thing he couldn't move. He crossed the room and dropped onto the bench across from her, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "Let me ask you something," he said, and now his voice was lower, meant for her and not the room. "You ever kill anybody?" Maya set the bolt down on the cloth. She looked at him then, and there was nothing in her eyes he could grab hold of. No fear, no anger, just a flat, patient calm that unsettled him more than shouting ever could. "Have you?" she asked. "3 deployments, Jake said. "You know I have." "Then you know it isn't something people brag about." Jake's face went hard. "I'm not bragging. I'm telling you the difference between a range and a valley. On the range, you've got all the time in the world. In the valley, a man is running at your brothers, and you've got half a second, and if you flinch, they die. Not you, them." He leaned in. "I've watched men who could outshoot both of us freeze up when it was real. Good men. Better than you." "Maybe," Maya said. "Maybe." Jake shook his head. "That's my whole point. Out there, it's never maybe. It's yes or it's dead." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Around them, the team had gone quiet, pretending to check gear, pretending not to listen. "You want to know what I think," Jake said. "You're going to tell me either way. I think somebody upstairs wanted a picture. A woman with a trident. Looks good in a briefing, looks good on a poster." He tapped the table. "And I think when it goes sideways, and it always goes sideways, they won't be the ones bleeding for it. We will." Maya picked the bolt back up. "You done?" she asked. Jake stared at her a long moment, then stood. "I'm done." He walked away, and the room slowly came back to life, and Maya went back to cleaning her rifle. Bolt, chamber, barrel, slow circles, but her jaw had tightened just slightly, just for a second, in a way nobody saw. Because the cruelest part of what Jake had said wasn't that it was a lie. The cruelest part was that some nights in the dark she'd asked herself the same question. Could she really do it when it counted? She thought she could. She'd trained until her body knew things her mind didn't have time to think. But thinking you can and knowing you can are 2 different countries, and there was only one road between them, and it ran straight through the worst day of your life. "Don't let him get in your head," a quiet voice said. Evan Brooks sat down where Jake had been easy, and unhurried, a mug of something hot in his hands. He was one of the older operators, close to 40, with gray coming into his beard and the kind of eyes that had seen enough to stop being impressed by tough talk. "He's not in my head," Maya said. "No," Evan smiled. Then why'd you clean that barrel twice? Maya looked down. She had in fact cleaned it twice. He's not entirely wrong, you know, she said quietly, about the valley. He's not entirely right either, Evan said. He's talking like the only thing that matters out there is how fast you pull a trigger. But you and I both know that's the least of it. He took a sip. The thing that gets people killed isn't slow hands. It's a mind that panics and stops thinking. And in 4 months, I've watched you in situations that would have made half these boys forget their own names, and I've never once seen you stop thinking. He set the mug down. That's rarer than a good shot, Carter. A good shot you can train. That other thing, you either have it or you don't. Maya didn't answer, but something in her chest loosened just a little. Why do you do that? She asked. Do what? Stand up for me. Nobody else does. You've got nothing to gain and a whole team to lose. Evan was quiet for a moment. You want the truth? Always. 19 years ago, I had a spotter named Ruiz, best I ever worked with. And for 2 years, I treated him like he had something to prove to me because he was young and he was quiet and he wasn't what I expected. Evan turned the mug slowly in his hands. Then one day on a rooftop outside a city I won't name, he took a round that had my name on it. Stepped right into it. Never said a word about it after, like it was nothing. He looked up. I spent 2 years deciding whether he belonged. Took him half a second to decide whether I lived. A pause. So no, I don't wait to make up my mind about people anymore. I've seen where that road ends. Maya held his gaze. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, Evan said, standing. Just be right when it counts. That's all any of us can do. He nodded toward the door. Walker wants everybody in the briefing room. 15 minutes. Something's got the whole building nervous. He walked off and Maya sat alone with her rifle for a moment longer. Then she slid the bolt home with a soft, final click and stood. The briefing room was already full when she walked in, and she felt the shift the moment she crossed the threshold. It was small. It was always small. A few pairs of eyes flicking toward her and then away. A conversation that dropped half a decibel. Jake near the front, not turning around, but somehow taking up more space because she'd entered. Maya took a seat near the back, set her rifle case beside her, and folded her hands. At the front of the room stood Captain Ethan Walker, and one look at his face told her Evan had been right. Walker was a man who wore command like a second skin, calm in a firefight, dry in a crisis. She'd seen him crack jokes while rounds cooked off around them. But right now his jaw was set, and his eyes were somewhere far away, and that scared her more than anything Jake had ever said. Beside Walker stood a man she didn't recognize, older. Civilian-bearing under a military haircut. The kind of man who spent his days in rooms without windows, deciding the fates of people whose names he'd never learn. Intelligence. She could smell it. All right, Walker said, and the room went silent. I'm going to give this to you straight because you've all earned that and because we don't have time for the polished version. He nodded at the screen behind him, which stayed dark. 12 years ago, a man named Victor Hale sat in a room a lot like this one and briefed operators a lot like you. He was one of ours, one of the best intelligence officers this country ever produced. He knew our methods. He wrote some of our methods. Walker let that settle. 3 years ago, Hale disappeared. We assumed dead. We were wrong. He finally clicked the screen to life, though Maya kept her eyes on his face. Hale is alive. He is well, and he is currently sitting in a mountain fortress in northern Afghanistan, working for a terrorist network that until recently we didn't even know had a name. A low murmur went through the room. It gets worse, Walker said. 6 weeks ago, a package of classified military technology went missing from a facility that should not have been possible to breach. We now believe Hale orchestrated it. We believe he intends to sell it. And we believe the buyers are the kind of people who, if they get their hands on it, will use it to put a lot of American families in a lot of very small boxes. The room was dead quiet now. And there's one more thing, Walker said, and here his voice changed, softened at the edges in a way that made everyone lean in. 2 days ago, a young intelligence analyst named Daniel Foster figured out what Hale was doing. Foster's the one who confirmed Hale was alive. He's the reason we know any of this. Walker paused. Yesterday, during an attempt to bring Foster in from the field, Foster was taken. We believe he's being held inside that same fortress. We believe Hale knows exactly who he is and exactly what he knows. Somebody near the front swore softly. Foster is 26 years old, Walker said. He has a mother in Ohio who thinks her son has a desk job. He did his part. He blew the whistle on a traitor, and it cost him his freedom, and it may yet cost him his life. He looked around the room, meeting eye after eye. So we are going to go get him back. We are going to take Hale alive if we can, and dead if we can't. And we are going to recover that technology before it ends up pointed at us. He clicked the screen off. Questions. Jake's hand was already up. Sir, if Hale's one of ours, if he trained operators, if he wrote the playbook, then he knows we're coming. He knows how we'll come. He knows the angles we'll use before we use them. Yes, Walker said simply. He does. The word hung there. Then we're walking into a fight where the other guy already has our game film, Jake said. With respect, sir, that's not a mission. That's a man waiting for us to show up so he can watch us do exactly what he expects. You're right, Walker said, which is why we're not going to do what he expects. And now for the first time, his eyes moved to the back of the room. To Maya. She felt the whole room turn with him, like iron filings pulled to a magnet. Hale knows how we breach, Walker said, still looking at her. He knows how we clear rooms, how we stack, how we move. What he doesn't know, what nobody in that fortress will be expecting, is that this mission is going to hinge on a single shot from a position they'll swear no one could possibly reach. Because Hale, for all his brilliance, has one blind spot. The same blind spot half the men in this room have. His gaze swept the room and returned to Maya. He can't imagine that our best shooter isn't who he thinks it is. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then the intelligence man beside Walker spoke for the first time, and his voice was smooth and cold and reasonable, which is the most dangerous kind of voice there is. Captain, he said, I have to register a concern. Register away. The man turned slowly and looked at Maya, and there was nothing cruel in his expression, which somehow made it worse. It was the look of a man evaluating a piece of equipment. You're really going to hang this entire operary station, he said on one sniper. He didn't say her name. He said one sniper the way another man might say one wrench or one card, and the whole room understood the sentence he'd left unfinished. One sniper who was a woman. One sniper who was here because somebody wanted a photograph. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. Maya could feel every eye on her. She could feel Jake half turned in his seat now watching to see if she'd finally crack. She could feel the young operators uncertain, waiting to be told what to think. She could feel Evans still and steady, not looking at her, giving her the space to answer or not answer as she chose. She thought about 100 things she could say. She thought about her scores. She thought about the selection course that had broken men twice her size, the freezing water, the ruck marches that ended in vomit and blood the night she'd wanted to quit and hadn't. She thought about every proof she'd ever assembled, every number, every certificate, the whole exhausting architecture of evidence she'd spent her career building just to be allowed to stand in rooms like this one. And she understood in that moment with a clarity that was almost peaceful that none of it would matter. Because this man wasn't asking a question, he'd already decided. He was performing his decision for the room, inviting them to nod along, and any answer she gave that argued with him would only make her look defensive, and any answer that agreed with him would end her. So she didn't argue. She didn't defend. She stood up. She walked slow and unhurried past the rows of operators to the front of the room. She set her rifle case on the table with the soft, deliberate thud, and then she looked not at the intelligence man, but at Walker. No, sir, she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. You're not hanging this operation on one sniper. She turned and looked at the man from intelligence. You're hanging it on someone who can do the job. Nobody moved. You want to talk about who I am? She went on, and still there was no heat in it, which made it land harder. Fine, let's talk about who I am. I'm the person who's going to be lying on the open ground while the rest of this team is behind cover. I'm the person who's going to be the last one you can see and the first one they'll try to kill. If I'm wrong about myself, sir, I'm the one who pays for it. Not you. A pause. You'll be in a room with a coffee cup hearing about it secondhand. The intelligence man's expression flickered. Just once. That's a very brave speech, he said. It's not a speech, Maya said. It's a job description. You asked who you were hanging the operation on. I'm telling you, you're hanging it on the only person in this room whose life is on the line if she's overrated. She let that sit. So the real question isn't whether you trust me. You don't have to trust me. The question is whether you trust the man who chose me. She looked back at Walker. Because he's put more lives on the line than anyone in this room, and he doesn't do it for photographs. Walker held her eyes. Then very slowly he nodded. That's the whole briefing, he said, turning to the room. Wheels up in 6 hours. Rest while you can. Check your gear twice. He looked at the intelligence man. Thank you for your concern. It's noted. The room began to break apart, chairs scraping, low conversation resuming, and Maya picked up her rifle case and turned to go. Jake was blocking her path. He'd stood, and now he was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read, something working behind his eyes. That was a good line, he said, the coffee cup. It wasn't a line, Zwei. I know, Jake said, and for a moment it almost looked like he might say something else, something real. Then the shutter came back down. Doesn't change anything. Talk is cheap out here, Carter. Everybody's brave in a briefing room. I know, Maya said. Everybody except you, apparently. You've been trying to scare me in this building for 4 months. She walked past him. Behind her, Jake stood very still for a moment, and something in his chest that he would never admit to anyone shifted half an inch in a direction he didn't like. In the 6 hours before the flight, Maya did what she always did. She checked her gear twice the way Walker had said, and then a third time because Walker said twice and she did 3. She field stripped her rifle and reassembled it in the dark by feel until her hands could do it without her. She drank water she didn't want and ate food she didn't taste and lay on her back in the dim ready room with her eyes closed. Running the mission through her mind, angle by angle, breath by breath. She was not sleeping when the door opened. She knew from the footsteps it was Walker, and she sat up. You should be resting, he said. So should you, sir. He gave a tired, almost smile and sat down across from her, and for a moment he didn't say anything. Maya waited. She'd learned that when a commander comes to see you alone before a mission, you let him get to it in his own time. I want to tell you something, Walker said finally, and I want you to keep it in this room. Yes, sir. When I chose you for this, it wasn't because you're the best shooter I have, though you might be. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I chose you because of something that happened during your selection. You probably don't even remember it. There was a night exercise, a bad one, cold as hell, and one of the candidates went down. Hypothermia. Kid named Torres. Half the class walked past him because that's the smart move. That's what selection teaches you. You don't sacrifice your own performance for somebody who's washing out anyway. Walker's eyes were steady on hers. You stopped. You gave up your time, your ranking, your shot at a good score, and you dragged a man you'd never met 400 meters to a medic. And when the instructors offered to reset your run, you know what you said. Maya said nothing. You said no. You said you'd rather have the bad score and the clean conscience. Walker sat back. I read that in your file 2 years ago and I never forgot it. Because I've met 100 perfect shooters, Carter. I can find a perfect shooter in any unit in this country. What I almost never find is a shooter who will bleed for the person next to them before they'll think about their own score. He stood. That's who I need on that ridge, not a marksman, a guardian. And that's you, whether the man with the coffee cup can see it or not. He moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. His voice dropped. That intelligence officer, the one who questioned you. Sir. Walker was quiet for a moment, choosing his words. Something about this mission is off. I've done this a long time, and I've learned to trust the itch on the back of my neck, and the itch is as bad on this one. He looked at her. The intel's too clean. We know too much, and it came together too fast. The timeline on how we found out Hale was alive, how we found Foster, how we found the fortress, it all fits together a little too neatly, like a road that was built for us to walk down. He paused. I flagged it. I was told to run the mission anyway, by people well above me. Maya felt something cold move through her. You think it's a trap. I think every mission's a trap until it isn't, Walker said. But this one. He shook his head. Keep your eyes open out there, not just on the enemy, on everything. If something feels wrong, I want to hear it even if it makes no sense, especially if it makes no sense. He met her gaze. You're the one who will have the widest view from that ridge. You might see something the rest of us can't. Don't sit on it. Understood. Understood, sir. He nodded and left, and Maya lay back down in the dark. but she didn't run the angles anymore. She lay there with Walker's words turning over in her mind, and the cold feeling wouldn't leave her. The intel's too clean. A road built for us to walk down. She didn't sleep at all. The flight was long and loud and full of the particular silence that settles over men who are counting the hours until they might die. Nobody talked much. A couple of the younger operators dozed. Jake sat with his machine gun broken down across his lap, cleaning it the way Maya cleaned her rifle, and she noticed he cleaned it twice, and she almost smiled and didn't. Evan settled in beside her, closed his eyes, and said, without opening them, "You didn't sleep." "No, oh." "Walker talked to you." Maya hesitated. "How'd you know?" "He talks to the ones he's worried about." Evan opened one eye. "That's not an insult. It means you matter to the mission. He doesn't waste his worry on people who don't." He closed the eye again. "What did he say?" Maya was quiet for a moment. She thought about Walker's instruction to keep it in the room. But Evan wasn't the room. Evan was the person she'd want beside her if it all came apart. "He thinks something is wrong with the mission," she said so low that only he could hear it under the engine noise. "The intel, he thinks it's too clean." Evan was still for a moment. "He's right," he said finally. "You feel it too." "I've felt it since the briefing." Evan's jaw tightened. You don't find a ghost like Hale confirm a stolen tech package, locate a hostage, and pin down a fortress in the mountains all in 72 hours. Not for real. Intel like that takes months, years. He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Somebody handed this to us, wrapped up with a bow. And in my experience, when the enemy makes it easy, it's because the hard part is the part you can't see yet." "Then why are we going?" "Because there's a 26-year-old kid in that fortress who told the truth and got taken for it," Evan said simply. "And because a trap you know about is just a fight. We go in with our eyes open. That's the difference between us and the men who'll die in there." He settled back. "You just make sure that when the moment comes, and it will come, you're not looking where they want you to look. You're looking where you decide to look. That's the whole game, Carter. In a trap, the only freedom you've got left is where you point your eyes." Maya turned that over. Where you decide to look. She'd remember that. Later on the ridge, with a senior commander's hand closing on her shoulder, and the whole world screaming at her to look away, she'd remember it, and it would save more lives than any shot she ever fired. But she didn't know that yet. They landed at a forward base in the dark, transferred to trucks, drove for hours down roads that were barely roads, and then walked, and walked, and walked up into the cold spine of the mountains, into thinner and thinner air, until the base was a memory, and the world was reduced to the pack on your back, the man in front of you, and the enemy you couldn't yet see. Maya moved at the rear with Evan, her rifle broken down and cushioned across her body, her eyes never resting. She watched the ridge lines. She watched the shadows between the rocks. She cataloged every place a man might hide and every angle a man might shoot from, not because she expected to use the information, but because the day you stop cataloging is the day the mountain takes you. An hour before dawn, the team stopped. Ahead of them, black against the last of the stars, stood the fortress. Old stone, older than the country that had built it, dug into the side of the mountain like something the mountain had grown, rather than something men had made. It should have been crawling with sentries. It should have had patrols on the approaches, watchers on the walls, the low, restless movement of an armed camp in hostile territory. It had none of that. It sat there in the dark, silent and still. And every operator on that ridge felt the same thing crawl up the back of their neck at the same moment. Walker held up a fist. The team froze. "Report," he breathed into the comms. The scouts came back one by one. No patrols, no sentries, no heat signatures on the walls, no communication traffic, nothing. "It's empty," one of the young operators whispered. "Sir, it looks abandoned." "It's not empty," Maya said. Every head turned toward her. She had her scope out, and she was looking at the fortress through it, slow and methodical. And her voice was very quiet and very steady. "Third window from the left on the second level," she said. "There's a man there. He's not moving because he doesn't want us to see him move. He's watching the approach." She lowered the scope a fraction. "There's another one below the wall in the shadow prone. And there's a shape on the north tower that's the wrong shape for a rock." She lowered the scope entirely and looked at Walker. "It's not abandoned, sir. It's baited. They cleared the outside so we'd walk up thinking it was easy. Everything they've got is inside waiting for us to come through the front." Jake, a few feet away, was staring at her. Mom, how can you possibly see all that, he said. It's still dark. Because I've been looking for 4 months, Maya said. For exactly this. She met his eyes. You told me combat doesn't care about my records. You're right, but I never trained for the records Reynolds. I trained for the third window from the left. Jake didn't answer. Walker was studying the fortress now, and Maya could see the calculation running behind his eyes, the same cold itch he'd told her about turning into something solid. She's right, he said finally. It's a kill box. They want us in the front court. He keyed the comms. New plan. Nobody moves toward that gate. Repeat, nobody approaches the front. We find another way, and we find it before the sun comes up and takes our dark away. And it was in that moment, and as the team began to shift and reposition in the freezing pre-dawn, that Maya's scope moving across the fortress one last time caught something else. Something that stopped the breath in her throat. On the highest point of the fortress, on a small stone balcony that overlooked the entire valley, a man had stepped out into the open. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't crouched behind cover like the others. He stood there relaxed, comfortable, a mug of something warm cradled in both hands, and he was looking directly out at the ridgeline where the team had stopped. He couldn't have seen them. They were in the dark, in cover, hundreds of meters away. But he lifted the mug toward them, a small, unmistakable gesture, the way a host toasts an arriving guest. He was welcoming them. Sir, Maya breathed, I have eyes on Hale. Walker was beside her in an instant. We're top balcony, in the open. Maya's voice had gone flat and strange. Sir, he's not hiding. He's watching us. He's toasting us with a cup of coffee. Walker went very still. And Maya felt the cold thing from the ready room come flooding back all at once, colder than the mountain, colder than anything, because she understood now what had been bothering her, what had been bothering Walker, what the too clean intel had really meant. Hale had a coffee cup. The intelligence officer in the briefing room had talked about her while holding nothing at all. But he'd used the words he'd said. Maya would be the one on the ridge while he sat in a room with a coffee cup, and now here was Hale, hundreds of miles away, on a balcony at the far end of the earth, raising a coffee cup toward the exact ridge where she was lying. It could have been a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence. He knew, Maya whispered. Sir, he knew where we'd stop. He knew which ridge. There are a dozen approaches to this valley, and he's toasting the one we picked. She lowered the scope, and her hands, for the first time in 4 months, were not entirely steady. He didn't just know we were coming. He knew how we'd think, every step. Somebody told him, somebody who was in that room with us, somebody who helped plan this. Walker's face had gone gray. Say it, he said quietly. Maya looked at him. The trap isn't in the fortress, sir, she said. The fortress is just the bait. The trap is that we were sent here by someone who wanted us to come. The real enemy isn't Victor Hale. She raised the scope one more time, and through the glass in the growing light, she watched Victor Hale finish his coffee turn and walk calmly back inside a man with all the time in the world. The real enemy, Maya said, is one of ours. And far below men, inside the silent stone fortress, in a cold room that smelled of dust and old blood, Victor Hale set down his empty cup, looked at the young analyst chained to the wall, and smiled. They're here, Daniel, he said pleasantly. Right where I told them to be. Right where he told me they'd be. He crouched down until he was eye level with Foster, and his voice dropped to something almost tender. You still think somebody's coming to save you. They already walked into my valley. Every one of them, including the little experiment they brought along to make themselves feel modern. He tilted his head. The woman with the rifle. Do you know that's the one part I couldn't predict? He warned me about the captain, the machine gunner, the old spotter. He gave me all of them. Hale's smile widened, and it was the smile of a man who had never once in his life been beaten and could not conceive of it. But her he waved off, said she was nothing, said she was there for the photographs. He stood and stretched and walked toward the door. Isn't it funny, he said without turning around, the things men decide not to worry about. And on the ridge above, in the last blue dark before the sun, Maya Carter loaded a single round into the chamber of her rifle, closed the bolt with a soft and final click, and began very slowly to breathe. For a long moment, nobody on the ridge said anything, because there was nothing to say that wouldn't make it more real. Walker was the first to move. He pulled back from the edge, low and careful, and gathered the team leaders around him in a tight knot in the shadow of the rocks. And when he spoke, his voice was calm in the particular way that only very frightened men, who are also very disciplined, can manage. All right, he said, everybody listen and listen close, because I'm only going to say this once. As of 10 seconds ago, we are no longer running the mission we were briefed on. Jake's head came up. Sir, you heard me. Walker's eyes moved from face to face. The mission we were briefed on assumed we had surprise. We don't. It assumed we knew more than the enemy. We don't. It assumed the intel came from people who wanted us to succeed. He paused. It didn't. You're saying somebody sold us out, Jake said. I'm saying Victor Hale just stood on an open balcony and toasted us with a cup of coffee, Walker said. A man doesn't do that unless he knows exactly where we are, exactly how many we are, and exactly why he isn't afraid of us. He let that land. You don't get that from good luck. You get that from a source. Somebody on our side has been feeding him everything. Our approach, our timeline, our roster. His jaw tightened. Possibly our extraction plan. The last two words went through the group like a current, because if the enemy knew the extraction plan, then the way out was as much a kill box as the way in. Then we're already dead, one of the younger operators said. His name was Cole, and he was 23, and his voice cracked on the last word in a way he'd be ashamed of later. Sir, if they've got the whole plan, we're already dead. We just haven't stopped moving yet. Cole, Evan said quietly. No, he's right to say it. Walker cut in and turned to the young man. You're scared. Good. Scared keeps you alive up here, but listen to me because this matters. He held Cole's eyes. They know the plan. That's true. But a plan is a thing you make in a room, and a valley is a thing that happens in real time, and no trader who ever lived could sell them what we decide to do in the next 10 minutes because we haven't decided it yet. He looked around the group. That's our edge. It's the only one we've got, and it's enough if we're fast and if we're honest with each other. The second we start pretending this is going fine, we die. So nobody pretends. Understood. A ragged chorus of yes, sirs. Good. Walker turned to Maya. Carter, you saw all of it first. So I'm asking you, and I want it straight. If you were them, if you'd set this trap, where's the piece we haven't seen yet? Where's the second jaw? Maya was quiet for a moment. She'd been thinking about exactly that since Hale lifted his cup. The hostage, she said. Explain. Everything so far has been designed to bring us here, Maya said. The stolen tech, the ghost coming back to life, all of it. It's flashy. It's the kind of thing that gets a mission approved fast above your head before anybody can slow down and ask questions. But none of it needs us. Hale could sell that tech without us walking into his valley. She looked at Walker. The hostage is different. The hostage is the hook. Foster is the one piece of this that guarantees we come hard and come emotional. You don't leave a 26-year-old kid who told the truth. Nobody does. Whoever built this knew that. She paused. Which means Foster isn't incidental to the trap, sir. Foster is the trap. He's the reason we're standing where Hale wanted us. Walker absorbed that. You think he's bait we can't refuse? I think if we go get him the way they expect through the front, the way the plan says, then getting him is the moment they've been waiting for, Maya said. The rescue is the trigger. The instant we commit to pulling Foster out, that's when the second jaw closes. Jake shook his head slowly. So what we leave him, we came all this way to leave a kid to die. I didn't say leave him, Maya said. And then what? I said don't go get him the way they expect. Jake stared at her. And for the first time, he wasn't looking at her the way he'd looked at her in the briefing room, like a problem to be tolerated. He was looking at her like a man who has just heard something he can't argue with and hates that he can't. She's thinking like Hale, Evan said quietly. That's what you want, sir. You've got a mission planned by a man who thinks like us. You need somebody who can think like him. Somebody who wasn't in the room where he learned to predict us. He nodded at Maya. She wasn't. He waved her off. He told his people not to worry about her. That's the one blind spot in his whole design. He doesn't have her figured out because he never bothered to try. The words hung there and Maya felt the strange weight of them. Every insult she'd swallowed for 4 months, every dismissal, every man who decided she was decorative, Before she'd fired a shot, Hale had made the same mistake on a grander scale, and it had just become the only reason any of them might live. The thing they'd used to shrink her was the thing that made her invisible to the enemy. "All right," Walker said, and there was a new energy in him now. The energy of a commander who has stopped reacting and started thinking. "Carter, you've got the enemy's head better than anyone here. So you're going to help me build the version of this he can't predict. Everybody else tighten up, check your ammunition, and get your minds right, because we are about to do something that was not in any briefing, and the only person who knows it's coming is standing right here." He looked at his watch. "Sun's up in 40 minutes. Whatever we're doing, we do it in the dark. Move." The knot broke apart, operators peeling off to their positions, and for a few minutes the ridge was all quiet motion, the small metallic sounds of men preparing to fight. Maya stayed beside Walker, and together they built it fast in low voices, trading the fortress back and forth like two people solving the same terrible puzzle. The front court was the kill box, that was certain, so the team would not enter through the front. But the enemy would be watching the obvious alternatives too. The side approaches the rear. The places a well-trained SEAL element would naturally flow toward once they realized the front was compromised. Hale would have those covered because Hale knew exactly where a SEAL element flows. "So we don't flow anywhere natural," Maya said. "We do the thing that's tactically wrong, the thing no operator would choose because it's exposed and slow and stupid." She pointed. "The east face, it's open, it's got no cover. Any instructor would fail you for it, which is exactly why he won't be watching it hard, because he trained the instructors who'd fail you for it." Walker followed her finger. "That's a bad angle, Carter. If they see the team on that face, it's a slaughter." "They won't see the team," Maya said, "because the team isn't going up the east face, I am." Walker looked at her. "You put me on the east face high before the light comes," Maya said, and her voice was steady and certain now, the doubt from the ready room gone, burned off by the cold clarity of a real problem with a real answer. "From there I can see the whole interior of the fortress, every position they have hidden. The moment the team makes its real move, I can call out their guns one at a time and take the ones that matter. I become the eyes and the trigger. The team goes in a way Hale expects just enough to make him commit his forces, and then when he thinks he's won, I take the kill box apart from an angle he never covered. And when they figure out where the fire's coming from," Walker said slowly, "and they'll turn everything they've got on that face, on you, alone in the open, with no cover and no way down." "Yes, sir." "Carter," Walker's voice was quiet, "you understand what you're volunteering for. If this works, you'll spend the back half of it as the most exposed human being in this valley, with every enemy gun looking for you specifically. There's a real chance you don't come off that face." "I understand, sir. I need you to say you understand it, not just that you'll do it." Maya met his eyes. "I understand that I'm the piece Hale doesn't see," she said, "and a piece the enemy can't see is the only piece that can move freely. Evan told me that this morning, and more or less, the only freedom you've got in a trap is where you point your eyes and where they're not pointing theirs." She almost smiled. "They're not pointing theirs at me, sir. They never have. That's not a weakness anymore. That's the whole plan." For a long moment, Walker looked at her, and something in his weathered face softened, and Maya understood she was seeing the thing he'd told her about in the ready room, the reason he'd chosen her, not a marksman, but a guardian, confirmed in real time. "All right," he said, "go build your hide. Take Brooks. Nobody else needs to know exactly where you are, and I mean nobody." His eyes hardened. "We've got a traitor somewhere in the chain, and I don't know how deep it goes. And I'm not putting your position on any comms channel a traitor might be listening to. You'll have a dedicated frequency, you and me and Brooks, and you'll go dark on everything else." He gripped her shoulder, and it was nothing like the way the commander would grip it later. This was a grip that meant something. "You are my ace, Carter, and I don't show my ace until the table's already lost. Understood?" "Understood, sir." She and Evan moved out into the dark, low and fast, working their way around the valley's edge toward the base of the east face, and they didn't speak until they'd put a shoulder of rock between themselves and the rest of the team. "You did the math on that hide," Evan said quietly as they climbed. "The way down." "There isn't one," Maya said. "Not a fast one." "No," Evan agreed. "There isn't." He paused. "You did it anyway. You'd have done the same. I'm 41, Carter. I've had my war." He hauled himself up over a ledge and turned to give her a hand she didn't take because she was already up. You're 29. You've got a whole life you're putting on a rock in Afghanistan on a hunch about a coffee cup. He looked at her in the dark. I want to make sure you know that's what this is, so that if it goes bad, it's a thing you chose and not a thing that happened to you. There's a difference. It matters, especially at the end. Maya was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? She said. I've spent 4 months being told I don't belong, that I'm a photo, that I'm politics. And the whole time some part of me was waiting to find out if they were right. She started climbing again. This is how I find out. This exact rock. If I'm what they said I am, I die up here and I take the team's confidence in me down with me. And if I'm what I think I am. She pulled herself up over the last ledge into the position she'd chosen and looked back down at him. Then a lot of men who never trusted me are going to live because I was here. I can't buy that certainty any other way, Evan. I've tried. There's no certificate for it. There's just the rock. Evan looked at her for a long moment. That's the truest thing anyone said to me in this whole war, he said finally. All right, let's make you a hide he'll never find. They worked fast, the sky lightening by the minute, and Maya built her position with the patience of a person who has built 100 of them, choosing her lines of sight, ranging her distances, memorizing the interior of the fortress through her scope until she could have drawn it with her eyes closed. She marked the enemy positions one by one. The man in the third window, the prone shooter below the wall, the shape on the north tower, and dozens more revealing themselves as the light grew a whole garrison lying in wait inside a fortress they'd pretended was empty. Sir, she breathed into the dedicated frequency, I have the interior. I'm counting at least 30 fighters, all inside, all oriented toward the front court. There are 4 heavy weapons positions. 2 cover the front gate, 1 covers the side approach, 1 covers the rear. She paused. The east face has nothing on it. I was right. He didn't watch the one nobody would climb. Good copy. Walker's voice came back low and tight. You're my eyes now, Carter. Talk me through it. Where do I push to make him commit? And for the next several minutes, Maya ran the battle before it happened, calling angles, calling timing, building with Walker a false attack that would look to a man like Hale exactly like the desperate improvisation of a team that had realized the front was a trap and was scrambling for a side door. Real enough to draw his fighters out of their kill box and into positions where Maya could see them. Real enough to make him commit. It was, she would think later, been the strangest kind of intimacy, this planning, a fight in whispers with a man who doubted her that morning. The two of them, the only ones who knew where she was, her voice in his ear, the only thing standing between the team and a slaughter. And then in the middle of it, Walker's voice changed. Carter, hold. Maya went still. Sir. There was a silence on the line, and in it, she could hear faintly other voices, urgent and Walker's breathing, and something that sounded like an argument being conducted in furious whispers. Carter, Walker said finally, and his voice was very controlled, which meant it was very bad. We have a problem. A senior commander just arrived on the ridge. Maya frowned. Arrived, sir, from where? That's the problem, Walker said. He came in on a bird nobody cleared through me, and he's carrying orders that supersede mine, and he's telling me to abort the improvised plan and execute the original mission. Front court, standard breach. A pause. The exact plan the enemy has. The cold thing came flooding back into Maya's chest, colder than ever. Sir, she said slowly, who is he? His name is Grant Sloan, Walker said, Regional Intelligence Command, and Carter. His voice dropped so low she could barely hear it. He was in the briefing room. He's the one who questioned you. He's the one who talked about sitting in a room with a coffee cup while you were on the ridge. The world went very quiet. Maya lay on her rock in the growing light, 30 enemy fighters in her scope, a hostage somewhere below her, that everything had been designed to make them die rescuing, and she understood all at once with a completeness that took her breath exactly what the second jaw of the trap was. It wasn't in the fortress. It had just landed on the ridge. Sir, she said, and her voice was perfectly steady, because that was the one thing they could never take from her. Don't say anything on this channel that tells him where I am. Don't look toward the east face. Don't let anything in your body point at me. A pause. He doesn't know I'm here. Hale waved me off, and if Sloan's Hale's man, then Sloan waved me off too. As far as they know, I'm somewhere in that formation with the rest of you waiting to breach the front court and die like I'm supposed to. Her finger rested light along the trigger guard. Let's keep it that way. There was a long silence on the line. Copy, Walker breathed. You're a ghost, Carter. Stay a ghost. What's he ordering, sir, exactly? Full breach on the front court. 10 minutes. He's saying the delay's already compromised. Us says the window's closing, says every minute we wait, Foster's closer to dead. Walker's voice was strained. And Carter, the worst part is to anybody who doesn't know what we know. It sounds right. It sounds like a hard commander making a hard call to save a hostage. He's not raving. He's calm. He's reasonable. He's got the paperwork. A pause. If I refuse him, I'm the one who looks like I've lost my nerve. I'm the one who looks like I'm hiding on a ridge while a kid dies. And there it was, Maya thought. The real elegance of it. That was the trap inside the trap. Sloan hadn't come to force them at gunpoint. He'd come to make the death march look like the brave choice and survival look like cowardice. He'd come to weaponize their own honor against them. He picked his moment, Maya said. He waited until we were committed, until we were emotional, until Foster's clock was running in everybody's head. And now he's going to use the kid to march us into the kill box, and every man who follows him will think he's the hero for doing it. She was quiet for a moment. That's not intelligence work, sir. That's murder with a signature on it. I know, Walker said, but knowing it and stopping it are different things. He's got the authority. On paper, he outranks me. If I move against him and I'm wrong, if by some chance I'm wrong, and he's just an arrogant fool and not a traitor, then I've committed mutiny in a combat zone and I've killed a hostage doing it. A long breath. I need to be sure, Carter. Dead sure. Before I do the thing I'm thinking about doing, I need something I can point to. Something more than a coffee cup. Maya understood. She understood exactly what he was carrying. The impossible weight of it, a commander who suspected the man giving him orders was a traitor, but couldn't prove it and would have to choose between obeying an order he believed would kill his men or committing a crime that would end him if he was wrong. Give me a few minutes, she said. Keep him talking. Keep him on the ridge. And whatever you do, keep him from looking at the east face. I'm going to get you your proof. She began very slowly to move her scope, not toward the fortress, toward the ridge, toward her own team, toward the man who had just landed among them, and she found him quickly, a lean figure in unmarked gear standing a little apart from the operators, and she settled her scope on Grant Sloan and she watched. She watched the way he stood, the way he held himself easy and unhurried, in a place where every other man was tight with fear. She watched him talk to Walker, his hands moving in small, reasonable gestures. She watched him check his watch once, twice, a man waiting for a schedule to unfold. And then she watched him do the thing that ended all doubt. Sloan turned casually as if to stretch his neck, and his gaze drifted out across the valley toward the fortress. And on the high balcony, the same balcony where Hale had toasted them at dawn, a small light blinked. Once. Twice. A signal mirror or a scope catching the sun, something a flash meant to be seen only by someone looking for it. And Grant Sloan, standing on the ridge in the middle of an American SEAL team, lifted one hand to the side of his leg where no one behind him could see it, and he signaled back. 3 fingers. A pause. 3 fingers again. Maya's blood went to ice. Sir, she breathed. I have it. I have your proof. Her voice did not shake. Sloan is signaling the fortress. Right now. Hand signal low hidden from the team in response to a flash from Hale's balcony. 3 fingers twice. He's coordinating with the enemy while he's standing next to you giving you orders. A pause. He's not an arrogant fool, sir. He's the source. He's the man who sold us. He's been Hale's inside man this whole time, and he flew all the way out here to make sure the trap actually closed because he didn't trust it to work without him. The silence on the line was absolute. You're certain, Walker said finally, and it wasn't really a question. I watched him do it, sir. Through my scope, I'd stake the whole team on it. I am staking the whole team on it. Another silence. And when Walker spoke again, his voice had changed entirely. The strain was gone. In its place was something flat and cold and final. The voice of a man who has just set down an impossible weight because someone handed him a reason to. Then we have a traitor on this ridge, Walker said. giving me orders to march my men into a kill box in coordination with the enemy in real time. A beat. That's not an order anymore, Carter. That's an act of war against my own team, and I don't have to obey it. I have a duty to stop it. Yes, sir. But it has to be clean, Walker said, thinking out loud now, fast. If I move on him and it looks like panic, it fractures the team. Half these men still don't know what we know. To them, Sloan's a legitimate commander, and I'm about to draw down on him. I could start a fight inside my own element that gets more people killed than the fortress will. He paused. I need the team to see it, not just be told it. I need them to understand all of them in a way that leaves no doubt that this man is the enemy. Otherwise, the moment I move on him, I've split us down the middle. And Maya, lying on her rock with the whole valley in her scope, understood that this was the real hinge of the entire thing, not the shot she'd take later. This, the moment a team full of men who doubted her would have to decide all at once who to believe. A commander they trusted saying the man from headquarters was a traitor, or the man from headquarters, calm and credentialed, saying the commander had lost his nerve. And the tiebreaker, the one voice that could turn, it was the voice of a woman most of them had never trusted at all. Sir, Maya said slowly, when you move on him, he's going to say what men like him always say. He's going to say you've cracked. He's going to say you're paranoid, that you're seeing traitors in shadows, that you've gotten your people killed over a coffee cup and a woman's guess. She paused. He's going to make it about me. He's going to say you're betting the team on the one operator nobody trusts, and he's going to be counting on the fact that he's right, that they don't trust me, that when it comes down to his word against mine, they'll take his. Carter, he's not wrong to count on it, sir. 4 months I've given them every reason to trust me, and they haven't. Why would today be different? Because today, Walker said quietly, you're the only one who saw the truth. And there's a piece of proof he can't talk his way around. You just have to give it to them in a way they can check for themselves. A pause. That flash from the balcony. Is it still happening? Maya swung her scope back to the fortress. The balcony was empty now, but she understood what Walker was reaching for. The signal comes from the balcony, she said, thinking fast. If Sloan's coordinating a timed assault, he's not done signaling. There'll be another flash, a go signal right before the trap's supposed to spring. She felt the shape of it click into place. Sir, if you can stall him, if you can make him wait past the moment he expects the front breach to happen, he's going to get nervous. He's going to signal the fortress again, to ask why nothing's moving or to tell them to hold. And this time you make sure the whole team is watching his hands when he does it. And if the whole team sees a supposed American commander flashing hand signals to a terrorist fortress in the middle of a firefight, Walker said slowly, there's nothing he can say. There's no coffee cup left to argue about. There's just his own hands in front of everyone doing the one thing a traitor does. Yes, sir. That's thin, Carter. That's a lot riding on him, spooking on your schedule. It's not thin, sir, Maya said. It's the one thing he can't help doing. He didn't fly out here to trust the plan. He flew out here because he doesn't trust anyone but himself, because he had to see it close, because control is the whole reason a man like him betrays his country in the first place. He can't stand not knowing. So the second the clock runs past his expectation and nothing's moving, he will not be able to stop himself from reaching out to the fortress to find out why. It's who he is. A pause. The same way I couldn't stop cleaning my rifle when Reynolds tried to rattle me. Everybody's got the one thing they do when they're scared. His is control, and I'm going to make him scared. There was a silence on the line, and then softly, something that might almost have been a laugh from Walker. A grim, exhausted breath of a thing. You know, he said, the man from intelligence stood in that briefing room and asked if I was really going to hang the whole operation on one sniper. A pause. Turns out he was right to be worried. He just had the wrong reason. His voice hardened. All right, Carter, here's how it goes. I'm going to stall Sloan. I'm going to argue tactics with him, drag it out, question his plan by every second I can. You keep your scope on him, and you call the flash the instant it comes. And when it comes, I'm going to make sure every man on this ridge is looking right at him. A beat. And then it stops being your word against his. Then it's over. Copy, sir. One more thing. Walker's voice dropped. When it goes loud, and it will go loud, the second he realizes we've made him, it's going to happen fast and it's going to happen ugly. He'll have a weapon. He may have a second signal that triggers the assault. The fortress may open up on us the instant they realize the inside man's blown. You may have about 3 seconds between the moment the team sees the truth and the moment this whole valley turns into a gunfight. A pause. In those 3 seconds, you're going to be the only one with a clear shot at him and a clear view of the fortress both. You understand what I'm asking you to be ready for. Maya settled deeper into her hide. She put the crosshairs on Grant Sloane's chest, and she let her breathing slow and slow and slow until she could feel her own heartbeat and the long, calm spaces between the beats. I understand, sir, she said. I've been ready for it my whole career. I just didn't know it was going to be him. No, Walker said. None of us did. A pause. Stand by, Carter. I'm about to go start the most dangerous conversation of my life. The line went quiet. And on the ridge, hundreds of meters from the rock where a woman nobody had trusted lay with a traitor, centered in her scope. Captain Ethan Walker turned, arranged his face into something calm and troubled and reasonable, and walked toward Grant Sloane. Sir, Walker said, before we execute, I want to walk the front court approach with you one more time. Something about the left flank doesn't sit right with me. Humor me. 2 minutes. Sloane checked his watch, and a flicker of something crossed his face: impatience, or the first thin edge of unease. We don't have 2 minutes, Captain, Sloane said. Every minute you spend second-guessing that analyst gets closer to a bullet. I'd think you, of all people, would understand that. I understand it perfectly, sir, Walker said, and something in the way he said it made Sloane look at him a half-second too long. That's exactly why I want to get it right. And behind them, unnoticed, the operators began one by one to drift closer because their captain had angled himself just so, and something in his posture had told them, in the wordless language of men who have fought together, that they should be watching. Maya lay on her rock and watched Grant Sloane's hands, and she waited for the flash. The flash came at 4 minutes past the hour. Maya had her scope on Sloane's hands, and she'd been watching them for what felt like a lifetime. And she saw the exact moment his patience broke. It was small. It was almost nothing. A tightening in the shoulders, a quick involuntary glance toward the fortress, and then his right hand drifted down along the seam of his trousers, low hidden from the men behind him, and his fingers moved. 3. A pause. 3 again. He's signaling, Maya breathed into the frequency. Right now, sir, right hand down, low 3 and 3. He's asking the fortress why nothing's moving. On the ridge, Walker didn't turn. He kept his eyes on Sloane's face, kept his voice level, kept the conversation going about the left flank, all while every nerve in his body screamed at him to look down at those hands. He didn't. He'd learned a long time ago that the way you catch a liar is not by watching the lie. It's by making sure everyone else is. Reynolds, Walker said without raising his voice, without breaking his eye line. Come here a second. I want your read on the flank, too. And Jake Reynolds, who had been drifting closer with the rest of them, who had felt the wrongness in the air. The way an old soldier feels a change in weather, walked up to stand at his captain's shoulder. Close. Close enough to see whatever there was to see. What am I looking at, sir? Jake said. Tell me what you see, Walker said quietly. Not what you expect. What you see. And Jake, who was many things Maya had resented, but had never once been stupid, followed his captain's carefully neutral gaze, and then let his eyes travel down, the way a suspicious man's eyes always eventually travel to the hands. And he saw it. Maya watched it happen through her scope. She watched Jake Reynolds go still. She watched the confusion cross his face, and then the disbelief, and then slowly, terribly, the understanding. She watched a man who had spent 3 deployments trusting the chain of command discover in the space of 2 seconds that a link in that chain was rotten. Sir, Jake said, and his voice had gone strange. Why is he doing that with his hand? Sloane's fingers stopped moving. But it was too late, and everyone standing there knew it was too late, because you don't ask, why is he doing that with his hand about a man who's doing nothing with his hand? Doing what, Sloane said, and his voice was still smooth, still reasonable, but there was a new watchfulness underneath it now, a predator that has heard a twig snap. Captain, I don't know what your man thinks he saw, but we are burning daylight in a hostage's life on... Show me your hands, sir, Jake said. The words landed on the ridge like a dropped rifle. Every operator within earshot went quiet. Heads turned. The easy assumption that had held the group together since Sloan landed the assumption that this was a legitimate commander and this was a legitimate order, cracked straight down the middle, and into that crack poured every doubt they'd been swallowing since dawn. "Excuse me," Sloan said. "You heard me?" Jake had shifted his weight now, subtle the shift of a man getting ready. "You've been standing here telling us to run the exact plan the enemy's expecting, and I just watched you flash hand signals at that fortress. So show me your hands and tell me I'm wrong, and I'll apologize in front of everybody. Show me, right now." For one long-held breath, nobody moved. And Maya on her rock understood that the whole thing had come down to this single second, the second Walker had needed, the second where the team would have to choose. She could feel it balanced on a knife's edge. Half of them believed Jake. Half of them still couldn't accept. It still looked at Sloane's rank and credentials and reasonable voice and could not make their minds hold the idea that a man like that could be a traitor. The team was one wrong word from splitting from a fight inside itself, from exactly the fracture Walker had feared. Sloane knew it too, and Sloane, who was clever, who had always been clever, did the cleverest thing a cornered traitor could do. He laughed soft and tired, and disappointed, the laugh of a reasonable man at the end of his patience, and he turned to the group, spreading his hands, now showing them palms open, harmless. "Gentlemen," he said, "this is what happens when you keep a team on a ridge too long past the mission window. They start jumping at ghosts. Captain Walker's had a bad feeling since dawn, and now it's spread to his machine gunner, and in a minute you're all going to be seeing enemy agents in every shadow." He shook his head sadly. "I've seen this before. It's fear. It's understandable. But there's a hostage in that fortress, and every second you spend pointing fingers at me, he's dying." He looked around at them, meeting eye after eye, and his voice was warm and grave and utterly convincing. "I flew out here to help you complete this mission, to bring that kid home, and instead I find a decorated captain who's lost his nerve and is looking for someone to blame. So I'll ask you, all of you, one question. Who are you going to trust regional command with the full picture, or one paranoid officer and whatever he thinks he saw through the fog?" It was masterful. Maya had to give him that. It was the exact right thing to say, and she watched it work, watched the uncertainty ripple back through the team, watched a few of the younger operators glance at each other, at Walker, at the ground. Cole, the 23-year-old, actually took half a step back from Jake Torn, and then Sloan made his one mistake. And frankly, he said, warming to it, driving the wedge home, "I understand where the confusion started. Captain, you built your whole improvised plan around a single shooter's hunch. You put the fate of this team on the least experienced, most politically convenient operator in your element, and now you're so invested in her being right that you'd rather accuse a superior officer of treason than admit you gambled these men's lives on a woman who was assigned to you to make somebody in Washington feel good." He said it to hurt Walker. He said it to remind the team of the thing they had all half believed for 4 months, to reactivate the old doubt about Maya and use it to bury the new doubt about himself. He didn't know she was listening. He didn't know she was on the east face 300 meters away with his chest in her crosshairs. And most of all, he didn't know that the words he'd just chosen to save himself were the exact words that would damn him, because he'd just told the entire team out loud that the plan hinged on Maya Carter, and in doing so he'd told them where to find the one person on this ridge who could see everything he'd been trying to hide. Walker heard it too. And Walker, who had been waiting for an opening, who had needed the team to be listening for exactly this keyed his frequency, and said very quietly so only Maya could hear it, "Carter, the fortress. Are they moving?" Maya swung her scope off Sloan and onto the fortress in one smooth motion, and her breath caught. They were moving. The enemy fighters who had been lying in wait behind their reinforced positions, oriented on the empty front court, were shifting, repositioning. And she understood with a jolt of ice what she was seeing. Sloan's second signal, the 3 and 3, hadn't been asking the fortress why nothing was moving. It had been a command. Hold had become go. The traitor, sensing the team turning on him, had triggered the trap early. He decided that if he was blown, he'd take them all with him. "Sir," Maya said, and her voice was fast, now urgent. "They're repositioning." Sloan didn't signal a question, he signaled the assault. "The fortress is about to open up on the ridge. You've got seconds." He's not stalling anymore, he's sprung it. He'd rather burn us all down than get caught. A pause and then the thing that mattered most. Sir, get the team into cover. Now, when it goes loud, you'll have no time. Do it now. Walker didn't hesitate. He didn't argue with Sloan. He didn't try to win the debate. He simply raised his voice into a bark that cut across everything and said, "Cover. Everybody, move." And there was such absolute command in it, such certainty, that the team obeyed before their minds had caught up, bodies dropping and scattering toward the rocks on pure, trained instinct. All of them except Sloan. Sloan, who understood in that instant that the game was over, that Walker had stopped debating because Walker had stopped needing to, that somewhere out there, someone had confirmed the trap was springing. And Sloan's reasonable, credentialed calm fell away like a mask hitting the floor, and underneath it was the thing that had been there all along. He went for his weapon. Maya had been waiting for it, but she didn't fire. She would think about that later, that half second, and she would understand it as the most important decision of her life. Because Sloan's hand went to his sidearm, and every instinct she had said, "Take the shot," and she didn't. Because in the same half second, her scope caught the fortress erupting, muzzle flashes blooming along the walls as 30 enemy fighters opened up on the ridge. And she understood that if she spent her bullet on Sloan, the man diving for a pistol, then the heavy weapon that was even now traversing toward the huddled operators would cut down 4 of her teammates before she could reload. 1 bullet, 2 threats, a man's malice and a machine's fire. She chose the machine. She swung off. Sloan put her crosshairs on the gunner behind the heavy weapon on the north wall, the one that had the best angle on the team's cover, and she fired. The rifle spoke, and 300 meters away, a man died with his hands on a trigger he never got to pull, and the heavy weapon went silent, and 4 operators who would never know how close they'd come kept breathing. "Gun down, north wall," Maya said, already working the bolt, already finding her next target. "Sir, I've got the fortress. Deal with Sloan." And on the ridge, Walker turned to deal with Sloan and found he didn't have to, because Jake Reynolds had tackled him. The instant Sloan went for his weapon, the instant the mask came off, every doubt in Jake Reynolds evaporated, and 3 deployments of hard-earned instinct took over, and he'd driven his shoulder into the traitor's chest and taken him to the ground and pinned the man's gun hand to the dirt with a knee that would leave a bruise for a month. Sloan thrashed and swore, all the reasonable calm gone screaming, now screaming that they were making a mistake, that he was their commander, that they'd all hang for this. "Save it," Jake said, ripping the pistol from his hand and tossing it away. "You flashed a hand signal at a terrorist. I watched you do it. We all watched you do it." He hauled Sloan's arms behind his back. "You picked the wrong team to sell, and you picked the wrong woman to call a photo op." And in the middle of the firefight, in the middle of rounds, cracking off the rocks, and the fortress lighting up and men shouting, Jake Reynolds looked up out across the valley toward the east face where he now knew. Because Sloan had told them all that Maya Carter was lying alone on a rock taking apart the enemy, 1 shot at a time. He couldn't see her, that was the point, nobody could. But he understood in that moment everything he'd refused to understand for 4 months. He understood that while he'd been running his mouth in ready rooms about the difference between a range and a valley, she'd been the one who'd found the trap. He understood that the shot that had just saved 4 of his brothers had come from a position he'd have failed a candidate for even attempting. He understood that the woman he'd called a photograph was right now the single most important human being in this valley, and that she was doing the most dangerous job any of them had ever done alone on open ground, because it was the only place from which she could keep the rest of them alive. "Sir," Jake said to Walker, and his voice was rough. "Carter, on the east face, she's completely exposed up there." "I know," Walker said grimly, dragging Cole into better cover. "It's the only place the shots could come from. When the fortress figures out where she's firing from." "They already have." Maya's voice cut in over the frequency, flat and calm, and both men realized she'd heard them, that she'd been on the channel the whole time. 2 of the positions just swung off the ridge. "They're ranging the east face. I've got maybe a minute before they walk fire onto me." A pause and the bolt working again in the background, which means for the next minute, they're shooting at me instead of you. "Use it. Get to the fortress. Get low, get fast, come up the east face behind me where their guns aren't looking, and get inside. I'll keep their heads down. Move now while they're distracted by the thing they can't kill fast enough." And that was the moment Maya would learn later that the last of the doubt died on that ridge. Not when she found the trap, not even when she made the shot. It was this, the sound of her voice steady as stone, calmly explaining that she was drawing the enemy's fire onto herself on purpose, spending her own safety like currency to buy the team a path to the hostage and telling them to spend it well. You cannot fake that. You cannot fake the voice of a person offering to die for you in the middle of it without a tremor. And every man on that ridge heard it, and every man understood all at once the thing Walker had known since her selection, and Evan had known since the first day, and Maya had known her whole life without being able to prove it. She was a guardian. She had always been a guardian. The rifle was just how she did it. You heard her, Walker said, and his voice cracked just slightly on the words. Move. Bounding advance east face behind Carter's fire. We are going to go get that kid, and we're going to do it because she's buying it for us. Nobody wastes a second of what she's paying. He keyed the frequency. Carter, we're moving. Keep breathing. Copy, sir. Go. And the team went. They flowed off the ridge and down into the valley, low and fast bounding. From cover to cover and above them, the fortress raged, and the enemy poured fire onto the east face onto the rock, where they'd finally located the source of their casualties, and Maya Carter lay in the storm of it and did not move. She'd known this was coming. She'd done the math on it during the climb, told Evan there was no fast way down, chosen it anyway. And now it was here, and the rounds were walking toward her position closer with each burst, chips of rock stinging her face, and everything in her body wanted to flatten to hide to become small. She did the opposite. She rose up just enough to see, and she found the gun that was ranging her, and she put a round through the man behind it, and then she found the second gun, the one Jake had warned about, and she killed that gunner too. And for a few precious seconds, the fire slackened as the enemy scrambled to crew the weapon she'd emptied. And in those seconds, the team crossed the worst of the open ground and reached the base of the fortress alive. We're at the wall, Walker breathed. All of us. Every man. Carter, you got us here. Every man. Maya let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 4 months. Then finish it, sir, she said. Get the kid. I've got your back until I can't. Until you can't, Walker repeated quietly, and she heard in it the promise underneath the thing he wasn't saying that he had not forgotten. She had no way down that this wasn't over, that a man doesn't leave his ace on the table when the hand is won. Copy that, Carter. Hold the high ground. We'll come for you. That's not a maybe. The team went over the wall, and then for a stretch of minutes that felt like hours, Maya was alone. Alone on her rock with the whole fortress below her, hunting her and her team somewhere inside it beyond her sight, and nothing to do but exactly what she'd trained her whole life to do, which was to keep watching, keep breathing, keep finding the men who threatened the people she was protecting and taking them off the board one at a time. She fell into it completely, into the long, calm rhythm of it, breath and hold and squeeze and bolt, and the strange peace she'd tried to describe to Evan on the climb settled over her fully now. This was the answer, this exact rock. The question she'd carried for 4 months, the question Jake had put into words, and she'd sometimes asked herself in the dark, could she really do it when it counted, was being answered with every trigger pull, and the answer was yes, and the answer was yes, and the answer was yes. And then Evan's voice came over the frequency, and it was wrong. Carter! Tight, strained. Carter, I'm hit! Maya's heart stopped. She'd sent Evan down with the team, had watched him go over the wall with the others, her spotter, her one true friend on this earth of doubters, the man who'd told her about Ruiz on the rooftop and made her feel for the first time in months like someone believed in her without needing proof. Where, she said. Evan, where are you hit? Where are you? Talk to me. Interior courtyard, Evan gritted, took one in the leg. I'm behind cover, but I'm pinned. There's a shooter second floor, southeast corner window. He's got me boxed. I can't move without giving him the shot. A hiss of pain. The rest of the team pushed on toward the hostage. They don't know I'm down. I told them to keep going, told them Foster was the mission. A pause, but this guy's patient Carter. He's going to wait me out or wait for me to bleed out, whichever comes first. Maya was already moving her scope, hunting the southeast corner of the fortress interior. But the angle was bad, the courtyard sunk below the walls, the window Evan meant tucked back where she couldn't reach it from her position. I can't see him, she said, and the words tasted like poison. Evan, from here, I can't see that window. The wall's blocking it. I can't get an angle. I know, Evan said quietly. I already checked your line. You can't make this shot, Carter. It's not there. And Maya lay on her rock 300 meters away, and felt something she hadn't felt in the entire mission. Not when Sloane landed, not when the fortress erupted, not even when the fire walked toward her own position. She felt helpless. Everything she'd proven today, all of it lived in her ability to reach out across impossible distance and protect the people she loved. And now the one person on this earth who'd never doubted her was pinned and bleeding 400 meters away, and the wall of a fortress older than her country sat between them, and there was no angle, no line, no shot. "Evan," she said, "hold on, I'll find a way. Give me a second, I'll find Carter." His voice was gentle now, and that gentleness scared her more than the pain had. "Listen to me. Don't you dare come off that rock. Don't you dare give up the high ground for me. There are 20 men still up on those walls, and the second you stop watching them, the whole team dies inside this fortress. You hear me? You are keeping every one of them alive right now. You cannot leave that rock. Not for me. Not for anybody. I'm not gonna leave you to die." "You might have to," Evan said. "And if you do, it's the right call, and I need you to know that so you can live with it after. This is the job. This is the thing I told you about on the plane. Sometimes the only freedom you've got left is where you point your eyes. You point them at the walls, Carter. You point them where the whole team needs them. Not at me." And Maya, lying on her rock tears, cutting clean lines through the dust on her face for the first and only time all day, understood that he was right and understood that she was not going to do what he said. Because there was one thing Evan had forgotten. One thing he'd taught her himself without meaning to. The only freedom you've got in a trap is where you point your eyes, and where they're not pointing theirs. The shooter had Evan boxed. He was patient. He was waiting, which meant his eyes and his weapon were locked on the one spot where Evan was pinned and had been for minutes. And he had stopped thinking about anything else, because a patient predator watching cornered prey stops watching the rest of the world. "Evan," Maya said, and her voice had changed, the helplessness gone, replaced by the cold, clear thing that had carried her through the whole day. "The window's blocked from my angle, but the wall next to it isn't." "Carter, what are you?" "There's a gap above you. On the second floor, the wall's old. There's a section that's collapsed half open to the sky. I can see through it into the room behind the shooter's window." She was ranging it now, fast, her mind moving faster than it ever had. "I can't hit him through his window, but I can put a round through that gap into the room behind him off the back wall." A pause. "It won't kill him. The angle's wrong for that, but it doesn't have to kill him." "Then what's it going to do?" "It's going to make him turn around," Maya said. A round cracks into the wall behind him, out of nowhere in a room he thought was safe from a direction that shouldn't exist. He's a patient man watching a cornered target. The one thing a patient man can't handle is the ground moving under him. He's going to flinch. He's going to turn to see where it came from. Her finger settled on the trigger. And when he turns Evan for about 1 second, he's going to take his eyes and his gun off you. And in that 1 second, you're going to get up, and you're going to move, and you're going to get out of his box. There was a silence on the line. "That's insane," Evan said. "You're going to fire a round into a wall you can barely see to make a man flinch, so I can run on a leg that's shot in the 1 second his back's turned." A breath. "The timing's impossible. If you're a half second off, I stand up into a bullet." "I'm not going to be a half second off," Maya said. "Carter, you said it yourself on the plane. You said the thing that gets people killed isn't slow hands. It's a mind that panics and stops thinking. And you said you'd never once seen me stop thinking." Her breathing slowed and slowed into the calm spaces between the beats of her heart. "I'm not stopping now. Trust me, Evan. You told me this morning you don't wait to make up your mind about people anymore. So don't wait. Make it up right now. On 3 you move. 1. Carter. 2. She let out half a breath and held it, and the crosshairs settled on the gap in the ancient wall, and the whole valley narrowed to that one impossible point, and everything she was, everything she'd proved, everything she'd carried came down to a shot. She wasn't even trying to hit anyone with a shot whose only job was to make a killer turn his head. 3, she fired. And 300 meters away, in a room he'd thought was his alone, a patient man heard a rifle round crack off the wall behind him from a direction that should not have existed, and he flinched, and he turned exactly as she'd said he would, his weapon coming off the courtyard below for 1 single second. And in that second, Evan Brooks got up off the ground on a shot leg and threw himself out of the box and behind hard cover, and the shooter spun back around a heartbeat too late, his rounds tearing into the empty space where a bleeding man had been and no longer was. "I'm clear," Evan gasped over the frequency, half a laugh and half a sob. "Carter, I'm clear. I'm behind the pillar. He lost me. You did it. You—" His voice broke. "You made a man look the wrong way with a bullet. I've been doing this 19 years and I've never seen anybody make a man look the wrong way with a bullet." Maya let her forehead rest against the stock of her rifle for one single second. "Told you I wasn't going to leave you," she said. "You didn't leave the rock, though," Evan said, and she could hear the wonder still in his voice. "You saved me and you never left the high ground. You protected me and the whole team in the same shot." A pause. "Ruiz would have liked you, Carter. He'd have liked you a lot." And on his frequency, quietly, Walker's voice came in, and both of them realized he'd heard the whole thing. "Carter," Walker said, "we have the hostage. Foster's alive. We've got him." A breath. "And Brooks is up because of you, and this whole team is standing because of you, and I want you to hear me say it while it's happening and not after." His voice was thick. "There is not one man in this valley who doubts you anymore. Not one. You understand me? It's done. Whatever you came out here to prove, it's proven. Now I need you to help me finish this because there's one more thing, and it's the thing this whole trap was really about." Maya lifted her head and put her eye back to the scope. "Go ahead, sir." "Foster's talking," Walker said, "fast and scared, and he says we need to hear it before we exfil. He says Hale and Sloan weren't the top of this. He says there's a third man. Someone still back home. Someone who signed off on sending us here. Someone who's been protecting Sloan from the inside for years." A pause. "And Foster says the only proof that this third man exists, the only thing that can bring him down is inside in this fortress right now, in Hale's possession, and Hale is getting ready to run." Maya swung her scope up off the walls, up to the high balcony where the whole thing had started, where a man had toasted them with a cup of coffee at dawn. And there he was. Victor Hale, moving fast now, no longer relaxed, no longer smiling, a hard case clutched in one hand, heading for the far side of the fortress and whatever escape he'd prepared. "I have eyes on Hale, sir," Maya said and settled the crosshairs on the fleeing man. "He's running. He's got a case. And sir, from here right now—" Her finger found the trigger. "I can end this." "Don't kill him," Walker said sharply. "Carter, do not kill him. We need him alive. We need what's in that case. We need him to give up the third man. If he dies, the trail dies with him, and whoever sent us out here to be slaughtered walks free forever." A breath. "I need you to stop him without killing him. I need you to take a running man off his feet from 300 meters in the dark without putting him in the ground." A pause. "Can you make that shot?" And Maya Carter, lying on the rock that had answered every question she'd ever asked about herself, watched Victor Hale run for his freedom with the proof of a traitor's crimes clutched in his hand, and let out a slow, steady breath. "Sir," she said, "I already have." She fired and Victor Hale went down. Not dead. She'd put the round exactly where she'd meant to low, and outside through the meat of the leg, and the running man's stride simply ended his legs going out from under him, and he pitched forward onto the stone, and the case skittered from his hand and spun away across the balcony. "He's down," Maya said. "Leg shot. He's alive. He's not going anywhere, and the case is loose on the balcony about 10 feet from him. Somebody needs to get up there before he crawls to it." "Reynolds," Walker snapped, "take 2 men, get to that balcony, secure Hale in that case. Go." And Jake Reynolds, who 12 hours ago had told a woman that combat didn't care about her records, ran to carry out an order that existed only because that same woman had just taken a fleeing traitor off his feet from 300 meters in the dark without killing him. He didn't miss the irony. Somewhere in the back of his mind, even with rounds still cracking off the upper walls, he registered it, and it sat in his chest like a stone he'd have to deal with later. He hit the balcony hard, his 2 men fanning out, and there was Victor Hale dragging himself across the stone toward the case with a leg that no longer worked, leaving a dark smear behind him, and even now even broken. The man was smiling. "Don't," Jake said, putting a boot on the case and his weapon on Hale. "It's over. Stop crawling." Hale stopped. He rolled onto his back, breathing hard, and looked up at the operator standing over him, and his face was gray with pain, but his eyes were bright and amused. And that amusement was the most unsettling thing Jake had ever seen on a man he'd just shot. Over, Hale repeated. You think this is over? He laughed a wet, pained sound. Son, you have no idea what you've walked into. You think you won something here today? You think that shot saved you? He tilted his head back toward the valley, toward the distant east face, though he couldn't possibly see it. The shooter, the one on the rock. She's good. I'll give her that. Better than I was told. A cough. But she doesn't understand what she just did. None of you do. Then explain it, Jake said. Slow, and keep your hands where I can see them. Reynolds, Walker's voice came in his ear. Don't let him talk. Men like him talk to buy time and rattle you. Secure him in the case and get down. But Maya, listening on the frequency, watching the balcony through her scope, said quietly, Sir, let him talk. Foster said the proof of the third man is in that case, but Foster's a scared kid who got it secondhand. Hale knows the whole thing. He's the only one who does. And a wounded man in pain who wants to feel like he's still winning will tell you more than any file. Let him talk. I'll watch his hands. There was a pause. Copy, Walker said. Reynolds let him run his mouth. Carter's got overwatch. But you touch that case, Hale, and it's the last thing you do. Hale's smile widened at the sound of the frequency chatter he couldn't hear, but could clearly infer. She's watching me right now, isn't she? He said. The woman on the rock, talking in your ear. He shook his head slowly. You want to know the funny part? The truly funny part, I built this entire operation around the certainty that she didn't matter. His voice was fading now, the blood loss taking him, but he pushed the words out like a man determined to land a last punch. Sloan told me about all of you. Weeks of it. Walker careful, competent, predictable. The machine gunner aggressive, easy to provoke. The old spotter steady the glue. He gave me every one of you like cards, face up on a table. A cough. And when I asked about the woman, about the sniper, do you know what he said? He said she was a photograph, Jake said quietly. We heard him say it on the ridge. He said she was insurance, Hale corrected. For Washington, a diversity checkbox somebody made Walker carry. Sloan's exact words. He told me not to waste a single fighter watching her because she'd never be the one who mattered. The dying man laughed again, and this time there was something almost like admiration in it. And I believed him, because it made sense, because it's what men like us always believe. And that belief is the reason I'm lying here with a hole in my leg listening to a machine gunner take orders from a rock. He turned his head and looked sightlessly out toward the valley. So here's my last piece of advice, son, and it's worth more than anything in that case. The thing you don't bother to watch is the thing that kills you. Every single time. I spent 30 years learning that lesson, and I forgot it in one afternoon because a traitor told me a woman didn't count. And on the east face, lying on her rock, Maya heard every word of it and felt something turn over in her chest that she couldn't quite name. It wasn't triumph. She'd expected triumph if this moment ever came. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was a kind of grief. Because Hale was describing in his dying breath the exact machine that had ground against her for her entire career. Not a single villain, not one cruel man she could shoot off a balcony. A belief, a quiet, reasonable, universal belief shared by good men and bad men alike, that a woman with a rifle was a symbol before she was a soldier, a checked box before she was a shooter, a photograph before she was a person who could kill you from 300 meters in the dark. Jake had believed it. Sloan had weaponized it. Hale had built a battle plan on it. And all three of them were on the ground now in one way or another because of it. She'd spent 4 months trying to argue her way past that belief. And it had taken a traitor and a terrorist on the worst day of her life to finally show her that you couldn't argue past it at all. You could only outlive it. You could only be there on the rock when the belief finally cost the men who held it everything and let the arithmetic speak for itself. Sir, she said quietly, the case, get it open. Whatever's in it is what he was willing to die running with. That's the third man. Jake crouched, keeping his weapon on Hale, and flipped the latches. Inside, cushioned in foam, were the things Foster had promised. The stolen technology, compact and cold. And beneath it, in a sealed pouch, a drive and a stack of documents, and Jake didn't need to be an analyst to understand that he was looking at the thing 3 men had died or bled to keep hidden. I've got it, sir, Jake said. Tech's here. And there's a drive. Documents. He lifted them and his eye caught the top page and he went still. Sir, there's a name on this. It's a name I know. Say it on the secure frequency only, Walker said sharply. Not out loud, not where anyone might hear. Jake keyed to the dedicated channel, the one only he and Walker and Maya and Evan were on now, and said the name. And there was a long silence. Say it again, Walker said, and his voice had gone strange. Jake said it again. Maya on her rock felt the cold come back one final time because she knew the name too. Everyone in the community knew that name. It belonged to a man 3 levels above Walker, a man with a wall full of commendations and a reputation for sending teams into hard places and bringing them home. A man who had more than once been the voice on the other end of a radio telling exhausted operators that help was coming. A man they had all at one time or another trusted with their lives. That's not possible, Jake said. Sir, he's one of us. He's the realest one of us. He's the guy who signed the order that sent us here, Walker said quietly. I saw it. His signature. I thought it meant we were protected. I thought it meant somebody up top had our backs. A long, terrible pause. It meant he knew exactly where to send us to die. And there it was, this real shape of the thing finally revealed, and it was worse than any of them had imagined. It hadn't been a rogue intelligence officer and a defector cutting a deal in the mountains. It had gone all the way up. The man who'd been protecting Sloan for years, the man Foster had died trying to expose the man whose proof Hale had been clutching as he ran, was one of the most trusted commanders in the entire community. A man who had spent a career building the reputation that let him send teams to their deaths and be thanked for it. He sent Foster into the field knowing Sloan would have him taken, Walker said, working it out loud, his voice getting harder with each word. He needed Foster's silence, but a dead analyst raised his questions, so instead he manufactured a rescue mission. A real one, with real operators. Us. He sent a whole SEAL team to die in a trap, and the beauty of it, the sick genius of it, is that when we all got killed retrieving a hostage, he'd be the grieving commander who'd tried to save us. He'd give the eulogies. He'd hand the flags to the families. A breath. He'd have buried the truth under our coffins and walked away a hero. And the only reason he didn't, Evan said softly over the frequency, his voice weak from blood loss but steady, is that he made the same mistake Hale made, Tun. He looked at his roster and he saw one operator who didn't count. One diversity checkbox, one photograph. And he didn't bother to plan for her because in his whole worldview, she was never going to be the one who mattered. A pause. He built a perfect trap for the team he thought he had. He just didn't know he had Maya Carter. The frequency went quiet, and Maya lay on her rock the whole valley below, her going still now, the last of the enemy fire dying out as the fortress fighters realized their inside man was captured, and their plan was broken, and there was nothing left to win, and she understood the full weight of what she was holding. She wasn't just holding Overwatch on a fortress anymore. She was holding the only thing standing between the truth and a man powerful enough to bury it. Sir, she said, that drive, those documents, right now they're the only proof that exists. If we lose them, if they disappear in the exfil, if the wrong hands touch them between here and home, then it's Foster's word against a decorated commander's, and we all know how that ends. She paused. He's going to come for them. Not himself, but he's got reach. He got Sloan onto our ridge with a bird nobody cleared. A man who can do that can get people to a landing zone. The most dangerous part of this mission isn't behind us. It's the exfil. It's the moment we think we're safe. There was a silence, and then Walker said heavily, she's right, again. A breath. We are carrying a bomb out of this valley, and the man who built it knows we've got it. Everybody listen up. This changes exfil completely. We do not go to the planned LZ. The planned LZ is his LZ. We go somewhere he doesn't know about, and we don't put it on any channel he might be monitoring, and we don't trust a single aircraft we didn't personally confirm. He paused. And that drive does not leave my sight or Carter's Overwatch for 1 second until it's in the hands of somebody I know personally is clean. Understood. A chorus of copies. They moved fast after that. The team consolidated inside the fortress, Foster shaking and pale but alive, clutching a rescue he'd stopped believing in. Evan patched and mobile with a man under each arm, Sloan bound and silent and glaring. Hale fading, but stabilized because a dying man can't testify, and they needed him alive as much as they needed the drive. And Maya still on her rock, still the eyes watching the walls and the approaches and the sky, because the sky was where the real threat would come from now. Carter, Walker said as they prepped to move, "We're coming to you. There's no fast way off that face, I know, but there's a slow way, and we're going to come up and get you because I told you we would, and I don't leave my ace on the table." A pause. "Hold on, 10 minutes. "Negative, sir," Maya said. "Carter, sir, listen to me. If you come up the east face to get me, you lose 40 minutes, you expose the whole team on open ground, and you give whoever's coming for that drive the time they need to get here first." Her voice was flat and certain. "You've got a wounded analyst, a wounded operator, 2 prisoners, and the only proof of a treasonous commander that exists on this earth. Your job is to get all of that out of this valley alive. My job is to make sure nothing stops you. Those are 2 different all, and they're in 2 different places." A pause. "You go, you move to the alternate LZ. I'll cover you from here every step, and I'll come off this rock my own way, on my own time once you're clear. I know this face. I climbed up it. I can climb down it." "That's a 2-hour climb down in the dark on the wrong side of a hostile valley," Walker said. "Alone. Wounded team scattered. If anybody comes looking, then I'll be a woman nobody's looking for on a face nobody's watching, exactly like I've been all day," Maya said. "Sir, it's the same math it's always been. The thing they don't bother to watch is the thing that keeps you alive. Let me be that thing one more time. Get the drive out. Get Foster home. Get Evan to a surgeon. I'll be the last one off the mountain, and I'll be fine, because being overlooked is the one skill I've had more practice at than anybody in this valley." There was a long silence on the frequency, and when Walker spoke, his voice was rough in a way she'd never heard from him. "You know what the worst part of today is, Carter," he said. "It's not the trap, it's not Sloan, it's not even finding out one of our own sent us here to die." A pause. "It's that you're right about all of it. You've been right about every single thing since the moment you looked through that scope at dawn and told me it wasn't abandoned, it was baited. And I spent 4 months letting men in my own unit treat you like you were the weak link, when you were the only reason any of us are going to see morning." His voice caught. "So I'm going to do the thing you're asking because it's the right call and you made it and I trust you. But understand me. This is the last mission where you cover us from a rock nobody knows you're on. From here forward, everybody knows exactly where Maya Carter is, because Maya Carter is the reason we're alive." Maya lay on her rock, and for the second time that day her eyes stung. "Copy, sir," she managed. "Now get moving. You're burning the dark I bought you." They moved. The team flowed out of the fortress through a rear passage Foster knew from his captivity, down into the folds of the valley, away from the planned LZ, and toward the alternate, and above them and behind them. Maya Carter tracked their progress through her scope, calling threats, calling clear a voice in their ears, guiding them through the dark like a hand on the shoulder. Twice she saw movement on the ridgelines and put rounds near it to warn it off. Once she watched a group of the fortress survivors try to pursue the team, and she pinned them down with methodical, patient fire until they gave up and melted back into the rocks. She was the whole rear guard. She was the whole overwatch. She was, for the better part of an hour, the only thing between her scattered, wounded, precious team and a world that wanted them dead. And then at 19 minutes past the hour, she heard the aircraft. "Sir," she said instantly, "inbound aircraft, northeast, low and fast. That's not the exfil bird. The exfil bird's coming from the south, and it's not due for 20 minutes. This one's early, and it's wrong, and it's coming from the wrong direction." Her scope was already searching the sky. "Sir, this is it. This is his reach. Somebody sent a bird to the valley to make sure the drive never leaves it." "Can you see it?" Walker said tight. "Getting eyes now." She found it a dark shape against the darker sky, running without lights, and everything about the way it moved told her it wasn't there to help. "It's a light aircraft, door gun. It's not looking for us at the LZ, sir. It's tracking your movement route. Somebody fed it your general direction." A cold understanding. The alternate LZ isn't as secret as we thought, or there's a second leak. Or the man at the top guessed I'd never use the plan one, Walker said grimly. He knows how I think, too. He's had years to learn. A breath. Carter, that gunship gets a firing angle on my column, and it's over. We're in the open, we're carrying wounded, we can't scatter fast enough. What do you have? And Maya, lying on her rock, looked at the incoming aircraft and did the math one more time. It was a bad shot. It was in every measurable way the hardest shot she'd been asked to make all day. A moving aircraft in the dark at range from an awkward elevation, a target that would give her one pass and one pass only before it found her team. Any instructor grading it would have called it impossible. Any reasonable operator would have called for the team to scatter and pray. But she'd stopped listening to what was reasonable a long time ago. Around dawn, when a reasonable man had told a whole team that the mission depended on a photograph. "I've got one thing, sir," she said, and her voice was the calmest it had been all day, because the calm went deepest when the shot was hardest. That was the thing none of them had ever understood about her. "I've got the pilot." "Carter, that's a moving aircraft in the dark. That's not a—" "I know exactly what it is, sir," Maya said. "It's the shot I've been training for my whole life. I just didn't know it would be this one." She settled into the rock and let her breathing slow and slow into the long, calm spaces between the beats of her heart, the place she went that no one could follow her to the place that had answered every question anyone had ever asked about her. Get the team down, flat, now. When that bird changes course, it's going to change fast, and it's going to change ugly, and I don't want anybody standing when it does. "Down," Walker roared. "Everybody flat, now do it." And the team dropped, and the aircraft came on, lining up its run on a column of wounded Americans in the most important piece of evidence in the country, and its door gun began to traverse toward them. And the gunner behind it had no idea. None that 300 meters away on a rock, nobody was watching. On a face, nobody had bothered to guard a woman that a traitor had called a photograph, had the pilot's head centered in her crosshairs, and was letting out one last slow, steady breath. "Sir," Maya said softly, and it was almost gentle the way she said it, the way you'd speak to someone you were about to protect. "Tell Evan he was right, on the plane, about where I point my eyes." And she pointed them exactly where the whole team needed them. And she fired. The aircraft fell out of the sky. One shot and the pilot slumped over the controls, and the bird that had come to erase a SEAL team and bury the truth banked hard and wrong and went down into the far end of the valley in a long, tearing crash that no one aboard walked away from. And on the frequency there was silence, the stunned silence of men who had just watched the impossible happen for the third time in one night. And then Cole, the 23-year-old, who'd nearly stepped away from Jake on the ridge, said in a voice full of something close to awe, "She shot a pilot out of a moving aircraft in the dark." "Yeah," Jake said quietly, "she did. That's not a shot a person makes." "No," Jake said, "it's not." A pause. "She makes it anyway. That's the whole thing about her. That's the thing I couldn't see." He was quiet for a moment. "That's the thing I called a photograph." And on her rock, Maya Carter let out a breath and lowered the rifle, and did not feel triumph and did not feel pride, and felt only the deep bone-level exhaustion of a person who has been carrying something heavy for a very long time and is finally allowed to set it down. "Sir," she said, "bird's down, sky's clear. You're good to move to the LZ." A pause. "Get them home." "Carter," Walker said, and his voice was not the voice of a commander, but it was just the voice of a man. "Come off that rock, please. That's not an order. I'm asking you, come home with us. We'll wait. We'll cover you. Whatever it takes, we are not leaving this valley without you." Maya looked out over the valley at the fortress that had been a trap, at the distant smoke of the aircraft she'd brought down, at the dark folds of ground where her team lay waiting for her. And for the first time in 4 months, she believed him. "I'm coming, sir," she said. "Give me 20 minutes to get down. And sir, go ahead. Have somebody watch the sky while I climb, just in case." A pause, and then softer something almost like humor in her voice for the first time all night. "I've been the one watching the ski all day. It'd be nice just once to have somebody watching it for me." There was a silence on the line, and then Walker said thickly, "Somebody's watching, Carter. Everybody's watching. You're not the one nobody sees anymore. Now get down here." She climbed down. And when she came off the last of the rock, stiff and scraped and hollowed out, and walked into the cluster of her team in the dark, something happened that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. Nobody said anything grand. Nobody made a speech. But one by one as she passed, the operators reached out and touched her shoulder, her arm, the back of her neck. The small, wordless gestures men use when words are too big for their mouths. And she understood that she was being welcomed into something she had been standing outside of for 4 months. Not because she'd finally proven she belonged, but because she'd finally stopped needing to. Evan was propped against a rock. Pale, his legs splinted, and when he saw her, his tired face broke into a grin. "You made a man look the wrong way with a bullet, he said, "and then you shot a pilot out of the sky all in one night." He shook his head. "I'm done, Carter. 19 years. I've got nothing left to teach you. You're teaching me now." "You taught me the only thing that mattered," Maya said, crouching beside him. "Where to point my eyes," she gripped his hand. "I pointed them at you. I told you I wasn't going to leave you." "You didn't," Evan said. "You never left any of us." His eyes were wet. "That's the thing, isn't it? You never once left any of us." And then Jake was there. He'd been standing back at the edge of the group, and Maya had felt him there, felt the weight of him working up to something, and now he came forward and he stopped in front of her, and for a long moment, the man who had spent 4 months trying to break her couldn't find a single word. "Carter," he said finally, "I need to say something, and I need to say it out loud in front of everybody, because I said the other thing out loud in front of everybody, and it's not right to only apologize where it's easy." He swallowed. "The morning of this mission in the ready room, you told me everybody's brave in a briefing room. And I told you talk was cheap." A pause. "I was the one talking, Carter. 4 months. All that talk about the range and the valley, about who's earned what, about who belongs." His jaw worked. "And when the valley finally came, when it was real, when men were dying and everything I ever said I was about was on the line, you know what I did? I looked at your hands. I saw the truth. And I let a bleeding traitor and a dead terrorist tell me who you were because I was too much of a coward to have seen it myself." "Jake, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "You want to know the exact moment I knew it wasn't the trap? It wasn't the pilot. It was when you told the whole team calm as anything that you were drawing the enemy's fire onto yourself so we could reach the fortress. And you told us to spend it well." His voice cracked. "I've known men my whole career who'd take a bullet for the team. I've never known one who'd stand in the open and offer up their own life like it was change to buy the rest of us a door and do it without a shake in their voice." He looked at her. "That's not something you train. Walker tried to tell me that once. I didn't listen. That's something you are. And you were it the whole time, and I called you a photograph." For a long moment, Maya said nothing. "You want to know a secret," she said finally. "The morning of the mission, when you asked me if I'd ever killed anybody, and I asked you back, and you told me it wasn't something people brag about." A pause. "That was the first honest thing you ever said to me. That was the first moment I thought maybe under all of it, there was somebody worth convincing." She almost smiled. "I never wanted you to like me, Jake. I wanted you to be there. That's all any of us wants. Not to be liked, to be counted on. To have the person next to us know we'll be there when it's real." She held his eyes. "You were there when it was real. When Sloan went for his gun, you were the one who put him down. You didn't wait for an order. You saw the truth and you moved." She put out her hand. "That's all I ever needed to know about you." Jake looked at her outstretched hand. Then he took it and shook it, and something passed between them that neither of them would ever have to say again. "I was wrong," he said, "about all of it. I want that on the record. I was wrong." "I know," Maya said. "So did you get anything out of being wrong?" Jake let out a breath that was half a laugh. "Yeah," he said. "I learned to look at the hands and to watch the thing everybody tells me not to worry about." He glanced toward the ridge, toward the bound figure of Sloan. "The thing you don't bother to watch is the thing that kills you." Hale said that. Turns out he was talking about himself and Sloan, and if I'm honest, me. The exfil bird came in on time from the right direction, flown by a crew. Walker confirmed personally, and they loaded the wounded and the prisoners and the drive that would bring down a man 3 levels above them, and they lifted out of the valley that had been built to kill them all, and every single one of them was alive. What happened after took months. The drive was real, and the documents were real, and the name on them was exactly the name Jake had read off the top page. And when the truth finally came out, it went off like a boomerang through the whole community. A decorated commander, one of the most trusted men in special operations, who had for years protected an intelligence officer selling secrets to America's enemies, and who, when a young analyst named Daniel Foster got close to the truth, had manufactured an entire rescue mission for the sole purpose of getting an inconvenient team of witnesses killed in a foreign valley where their deaths could be mourned instead of investigated. He'd have gotten away with it. That was the part that stayed with all of them. He'd have gotten away with it clean and would have handed the folded flags to the families himself, would have spoken at the memorials, would have been thanked for his grief. He had built a perfect trap for the team he thought he had. He'd just never planned for Maya Carter because in his whole worldview, she was never going to be the one who mattered. Sloan talked in the end to save himself, and Hale talked to hurt the man who'd used him. And between them, they buried the commander under a mountain of evidence. And Foster, the scared kid who'd told the truth and paid for it, lived to testify. His mother in Ohio found out her son didn't have a desk job. She found out he was a hero. She found out he'd been saved by a team of people who refused to leave him, led into the truth by a sniper who'd found the trap when everyone else saw an empty fortress. And Maya Carter went back to the training grounds. The same training grounds where once she'd cleaned her rifle in slow, patient circles while men laughed at her from across the room. Where she'd carried the whole exhausting architecture of proof, the scores, the certificates, the evidence she'd assembled just to be allowed to stand in the room. She didn't carry any of that anymore. She didn't need to. Because word travels in a community that small, and the story of the valley had traveled, and now when Maya Carter walked into a room, the room changed in the opposite direction it used to. The younger operators watched her the way you watch someone you hope to be. The instructors sought her opinion, and the men who'd once decided before she said a word that she was decorative now understood that they'd been in the presence of the best shooter any of them would ever serve beside, and had almost been too blind to see it. She was cleaning her rifle one afternoon. Slow, patient circles when Jake sat down across from her in the same spot where he'd once tried to rattle her. "They're putting me in for it," he said, "the commendation, for taking Sloan down on the ridge." "Good," Maya said. "You earned it." "I told them I'd only take it if they understood something," Jake said. "I told them the only reason I was in a position to take Sloan down was that you spotted him signaling in the first place. I told them every man on that ridge who's still breathing is breathing because of you. I told them if they wanted to pin a medal on the ridge, they were pinning it on the wrong end of it." He looked at her. "I made sure it's in the record, Carter. Officially. Not because you need it, because the record needs it. Because the next woman who cleans her rifle in a room full of men who've already decided she doesn't belong, she should be able to point to your name and say that one. That's the one who was the whole reason. Read it and try to tell me I don't belong." Maya's hands went still on the rifle. "That," she said quietly, "might be the kindest thing anybody's ever done for me." "It's not kindness," Jake said. "It's the truth. I owe you the truth. I owed it to you 4 months before I paid it." He stood. "For what it's worth, I finally figured out what you were doing it all those months. Cleaning that rifle every time I ran my mouth. I thought you were ignoring me. You weren't, were you?" "No," Maya said. "You were waiting." "I was waiting," she agreed, "for the valley, because I knew the valley would answer the question you kept asking, and I couldn't. You wanted to know if I could really protect the people standing beside me." She slid the bolt home with a soft, final click, the same sound she'd made in the ready room a lifetime ago before any of it. "I couldn't tell you the answer, Jake. I could only show you. And I couldn't show you here on a range where you'd always find a way to say it didn't count." She looked up at him. "I could only show you where it counted. So I waited, and I cleaned my rifle, and I let the battlefield answer for me." Jake looked at her for a long moment. "It answered," he said. "It answered," she agreed. He nodded and started to walk away, and then he stopped and turned back and asked the thing he'd clearly been carrying. "How'd you make that last shot?" he said. "The pilot, moving aircraft dark that range. I've asked everybody. Nobody can tell me how a person makes that shot." He shook his head. "How'd you do it?" And Maya Carter, who had spent her whole career being asked to explain herself, to justify herself, to prove with numbers and words that she was what she said she was, gave the only answer that had ever been true. "I stopped trying to make the shot," she said. "I just protected my team. The shot was only ever the way I did it." She picked up the cleaning rag. "That was the thing none of you ever understood. You all thought I was a sniper who happened to be on your team. I was never that. She met his eyes, and there was no heat in it, no pride, just the calm certainty of a person who has finally been seen for exactly what she is. I was your teammate. The rifle was just how I kept you alive. Jake stood there a moment longer. Then he nodded slow, and this time when he walked away, he wasn't leaving her behind. He was walking off to rejoin a team that both of them belonged to equally completely, without a single question left between them. And that was the thing the whole valley finally taught the men who doubted her. It was never about a woman proving she was as good as the men beside her. She'd always been that and better, and a certificate could have told them so if any of them had cared to read it. It was about something deeper, something you couldn't put on a range or write in a file. It was about the difference between a person who fights to prove they belong and a person who fights because the people beside them are worth dying for. Maya Carter had never once needed them to believe she belonged. She'd only needed them to still be alive at the end of the day, so that someday when it mattered, they'd know she'd been the reason. They knew it now. And whenever a new operator hearing the story for the first time asked how an entire SEAL unit that once doubted her came to trust the woman with the sniper rifle so completely that they'd have died before letting anyone lay a hand on her, the answer was always the same, and it never changed and it never would. They didn't trust her words. She never gave them many. They trusted the shots that saved their lives and the voice in their ears that never once shook, and the woman on the rock who spent her own safety like currency to buy them a way home and asked for nothing in return but the chance to stand beside them. Nobody touches her, not because she couldn't protect herself, but because in the end, she was the one who had protected them all. The months between the valley and the courtroom were the strangest of Maya Carter's life, because for the first time she was famous inside the only world that had ever mattered to her, and she hated every second of it. She'd wanted to be counted on. She had never once wanted to be watched. And now, everywhere she went, she was watched in a new way, a good way, but a way that made her skin crawl all the same. Because being the woman everyone talked about was too close to being the photograph they'd once accused her of being. She'd spent 4 months trying to be invisible enough to be judged on her work. Now she was so visible, she could barely find the work under all the looking. "You're doing it again," Evan told her one afternoon. He was off the crutches by then, walking with a cane he swore he'd throw in a river the day the doctors cleared him, and he'd driven 3 hours to sit on her porch and drink bad coffee and watch her not talk about it. That thing where you go quiet and clean something. Maya looked down. She was cleaning her rifle. She hadn't even noticed she'd started. "I don't know how to be the story," she said. "I know how to be the one who does the job. I don't know how to be the one everybody points at." "You're not the story, Carter," Evan said. "Foster's the story. That kid told the truth when the truth cost him everything. You're just the reason the story has an ending instead of a funeral." He took a slow sip. "There's a difference, and you should hold on to it, because it's the thing that's going to get you through the next part." "What next part?" "The hearing," Evan said quietly. "They're going to make you testify, all of us. And you're not going to like what it does to you." He was right. He was almost always right. The hearing was closed, the way those things are in a room without windows, where the fates of people are decided by men who will never learn their names, and Maya sat in a chair and told the truth into a microphone for 6 hours across 2 days, and it was harder than the ridge. On the ridge, she'd only had to be brave. Here she had to be exact, because a man's whole crime rested on whether she could describe precisely the thing she'd seen through her scope. At 4 minutes past the hour, the 3 fingers, the pause, the 3 fingers again. "You're testifying," a lawyer for the defense said on the second day, "that you identified a hand signal at a range of 300 meters in low light through a rifle scope, and that this hand signal is the foundation of a treason charge against a decorated officer." He let it sit. "You understand how that sounds?" "I understand exactly how it sounds," Maya said. "It sounds like the word of one sniper against the reputation of a commander." She looked at him steadily. "That's the same thing another man said in a briefing room the morning of the mission. He said the whole operation shouldn't hang on one sniper. He was Grant Sloan. He's the one I watched signal the fortress." A pause. "So yes, I understand how it sounds. I've been listening to it sound that way my whole career. It sounded exactly that way right up until the moment it was the only thing standing between my team and a valley full of men waiting to kill them." The room went very quiet. "And I'll tell you the same thing I told Captain Walker on the ridge," Maya went on. "You don't have to trust me. You can check it. Sloan signaled a timed assault. That means there's a schedule, and a schedule leaves records, and Victor Hale kept records, and those records are on the drive we recovered, and the timestamps on that drive will line up with the exact minute I called that signal because I called it in real time on a recorded frequency. She sat back. So don't take my word. I've never once asked anybody to take my word. Take the timestamps. They took the timestamps. They lined up to the minute. And that was the moment the prosecutor would say later that the case stopped being one sniper's word and became a wall no reputation could climb. Sloan broke first. He'd always been going to break first because Sloan's whole self was built on control. And a man like that, once he's lost control, has nothing left to protect but his own skin. He talked for 3 days. He gave them the commander. He gave them the years of it, the payments, the leaks, the careful architecture of a betrayal that had been quietly killing Americans for longer than anyone wanted to count. And Hale, dying slowly in a hospital bed under guard, gave them the rest not to save himself, because there was no saving himself, but for the one thing men like Hale have, instead of a conscience, which is the need to make sure that the man who used him goes down harder than he does. You want to know the funny thing, Hale told the investigators in one of the last coherent conversations he had. He called me, the commander, weeks before the mission. He was nervous about one variable, one piece he couldn't predict. A thin, wet laugh. The woman, the sniper. He'd built the whole thing around a roster he understood, and there she was, this element he had no read on, and it bothered him. He'd smiled, then gray and fading. You know what I told him? I told him not to worry. I told him she didn't count. I told him no team hangs its life on a diversity checkbox. His eyes had drifted to the ceiling. 2 men who spent their whole lives being right about people, and we agreed easy as anything that she was the one thing we didn't have to plan for. A long breath. Put that on my stone. Here lies a man who understood everything except the only thing that mattered. When the commander was finally arrested, it did not happen in a valley or a courtroom or anywhere with cameras. It happened quietly in a hallway by men he'd once commanded, and by all accounts, he said nothing at all because there was nothing left to say. The perfect trap he'd built for the team he thought he had was closed at last around him, and the folded flags he'd planned to hand to grieving families were handed to no one because every single member of the team he'd sent to D walked into the daylight alive. Maya went to Ohio. She didn't have to. Nobody ordered her to. But she couldn't stop thinking about the line from Walker's briefing, a lifetime ago, about a mother who thought her son had a desk job, and she found she couldn't let it stay a line. So she flew to a small town she'd never heard of and stood on a porch and knocked on a door. And when Daniel Foster's mother opened it, Maya didn't know what she was going to say. She didn't have to say anything. The woman looked at her and looked at the uniform, and something in her face did the math, and she reached out and took both of Maya's hands in hers. You're one of them, the mother said. The ones who went and got my boy. Yes, ma'am. He told me about you, the woman said, and her eyes filled. He said there was a woman on a rock. He said she was the reason. He said they had all decided she didn't matter, and then she was the only one who did. She squeezed Maya's hands hard. He said you found the trap. He said if you hadn't looked through that scope and seen what nobody else saw, they'd all have walked into the front and died, and my son would have died with them, and I'd have gotten a flag and a lie about a desk job. Maya's throat closed. He's a brave young man, ma'am, she managed. He told the truth when it cost him everything. That's rarer than any shot I ever made. We didn't save a hostage. We saved a witness who had the courage to be one. He's the reason a traitor's going away, not me. You're both the reason, the mother said fiercely. Don't you do that. Don't you stand on my porch and give away your part of it. My whole life I watched people give women their part of things to hold and then quietly take the credit back. She held Maya's eyes. Not in my house. In my house, you get to keep it. You saved my son. Say thank you and let me be grateful, and don't you dare argue. And Maya Carter, who had spent her entire career learning how to swallow things, could not swallow that one. She wept on a stranger's porch in Ohio, and a mother she'd never met held her while she did it. And it was the first time since the valley that she'd let any of it out. And it came out of her in great shaking waves, 4 months of doubt, and one impossible night, and a whole career of being told she was decorative. All of it on a porch in a small town in the arms of a woman whose son was alive because she'd been on a rock. Nobody thought to watch. There now, the mother said. There now, you're allowed. You saved my boy and you're allowed. Back at the training grounds, things had changed in a way that couldn't be undone. The commendation Jake had insisted on went into the record, and it was written plainly without softening, and it said in official language what Jake had said on the porch of the range, that every man who walked out of that valley walked out because Maya Carter had seen a trap, where everyone else saw an empty fortress held overwatch alone from an exposed position for hours, drawn enemy fire onto herself. To buy her team a path to the hostage, made 3 shots that no reasonable person would call possible, and asked for nothing in return. And Walker made sure of one more thing. He stood in front of the assembled unit on an ordinary morning, and he did something Maya had never seen a commander do. He apologized. Not to her privately, though he had done that too. He apologized in front of everyone. For 4 months, Walker said, there were men in this unit who treated one of our own like she was the weak link. And I knew better, and I let it happen because I told myself the valley would sort it out. He looked at Maya standing at the back the way she always did. The valley did sort it out, but it shouldn't have had to. A person shouldn't have to nearly die 3 times in one night to be treated like they belong. That's on me. That's on this unit, and it's not happening again to her or to anyone who comes after her. He let it sit. Carter found the trap that would have killed every one of us. Remember that. And the next time you look at an operator and decide before they've fired a shot what they're worth, remember what it cost us to almost learn that lesson too late. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And then from somewhere in the ranks, one of the young operators, Cole, the one who'd nearly stepped away from Jake on the ridge, started to clap. And then another. And then all of them, the whole unit, the same men who had once laughed at a woman cleaning her rifle, stood and clapped for her. And Maya stood at the back and let them, and did not clean anything, and did not disappear, and for once in her life let herself simply be seen. Afterward, Jake found her. You didn't clean anything just now, he said. The whole time they were clapping. You just stood there and took it. I know, Maya said. It was the hardest thing I've done since the valley. Jake laughed, and it was a real laugh, easy the laugh of a man who'd finally set down something heavy. Yeah, he said, that tracks. He was quiet a moment. You know what I keep thinking about that morning? When I asked if you'd ever killed anybody trying to rattle you, and you cleaned your rifle instead of answering. He shook his head. I thought you were dodging. You weren't. You were telling me the only answer that was true, that it wasn't something to brag about, that it wasn't a thing you'd ever perform for me. He looked at her. You answered me honestly the first day, and I called it dodging. That's the whole 4 months right there. You being honest and me deciding it didn't count. It counts now, Maya said. It counts now, Jake agreed. They stood together in the quiet after the room had emptied, 2 people who had started as enemies and become, through the worst night of both their lives, something closer than most people ever get. Can I ask you something? Jake said. The thing you said to Evan right before the last shot, the pilot. You told him to remember he was right about where you point your eyes. He frowned. What did that mean? Maya was quiet for a moment. On the plane going in, Evan told me the only freedom you've got in a trap is where you point your eyes, she said, where you decide to look and where they're not looking. He meant it as tactics, but it turned out to be everything. She picked up her rifle not to clean it, just to hold it. Everybody in that valley told me where to point my eyes. Sloan wanted me pointed at the front court dying with the rest of you. The enemy wanted me pointed at my own survival, flattened on that rock hiding. Even Evan, when he was pinned and bleeding, told me to point my eyes at the walls and let him die. She slid the bolt closed, that soft final click. And every single time I decided for myself, that was the whole thing. That was the only thing that was ever mine. Not the shots, not the rifle. The choice of where to look when everybody was screaming at me to look away. She met his eyes. They spent 4 months telling me I was the one who didn't count. And it turned out being the one nobody watches means you're the one who's free to watch everything. They made me invisible, and invisible was the only thing that could save you. Jake absorbed that. That's the thing, isn't it? He said slowly. You took the worst thing we did to you, all of us deciding you didn't matter, and you turned it into the reason we're alive. I didn't have a choice, Maya said. It was the only weapon they left me, so I used it. She almost smiled. You want the real secret, Jake. It's not the shooting. Anybody can be taught to shoot. The secret is that I stopped needing you to see me. The day I stopped needing to be seen was the day I got good enough to save you. Because once I didn't need your eyes on me, I could put all of mine on you." A pause. That's the whole story. That's how the woman nobody watched ended up being the one watching over everybody. Jake didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he put out his hand the way he had in the valley, and Maya took it, and this time there was nothing left to prove between them, nothing left to apologize for, nothing left but two teammates who both finally belonged to the same thing. Maya Carter stayed with the unit for the rest of her career. She trained the ones who came after. And when a new operator arrived, Quiet Doubted watched with that old familiar skepticism. She'd find them sooner or later cleaning their gear alone in a corner while the room decided what they were worth. And she'd sit down across from them in the same spot where Evan had once sat down across from her, and she'd say the things she wished someone had been able to prove to her sooner. "Don't waste your energy trying to make them see you, Graham," she'd tell sauce to them. "You can't argue a person into respect. I tried for 4 months. It doesn't work." She'd let it land. Just be there when it's real. Be the one who's still standing at the end of the worst day. That's the only proof that ever counts, and it's the only proof you'll ever need. They'll doubt your words. Let them. Words are cheap out here, and everybody's brave in a briefing room. A small, hard-won smile. But nobody argues with the person who kept them alive. Nobody. And whenever one of those young operators hearing the story of the valley for the first time asked her how it felt on the rock alone with the whole unit that had doubted her suddenly standing between her and anyone who tried to stop her, when a man with no authority left, grabbed her shoulder, and the entire team turned as one and formed a wall around her, and Jake Reynolds said the 3 words that became the name of the whole legend, Maya would only shake her head. Because they'd gotten that part wrong in the retelling, the way legends always get one part wrong. The team hadn't formed that wall to protect her because she was fragile. She was the least fragile person in the valley. They'd formed it because in that single moment, watching her lie exposed on open ground to make an impossible shot that would save all their lives, they had finally understood the things she'd known about herself all along and never been able to make them believe. That she was never the one who needed protecting. She was the one doing the protecting. She always had been. From the first day she cleaned her rifle in a room full of laughter, to the last shot that pulled a gunship out of the sky, she had been standing guard over people who couldn't yet see that she was the reason they got to go home. "Nobody touches her," Jake had said, but it was never a wall to keep her safe. It was a unit at last learning how to stand for the one who had always quietly, without thanks, without recognition, without ever once asking to be seen, been standing for them. Maya Carter was never the photograph. She was the reason there was anyone left alive to take one.